Reborn as the Viking Pirate King. Welcome back, brave explorers of impossible worlds. We are excited to have you here to continue this odyssey together. Before we continue, everything you'll hear is pure fiction, so please don't try to replicate combat techniques at home. This wonderful story in all its rights belong to its brilliant original author. We are only the messengers of entertainment. Want another dose of adventure? Subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a single chapter, and if you can't wait, our Patreon has exclusive surprises you'll love. Chapter 376 Hunting Time, 2. Although Vikings made up only a small portion of the 1,000 troops that Grandpa Clint brought from Salt County, the overall combat capability of the force was formidable. Even facing the onslaught of drowned people, sea monsters, and floating corpses, the vast majority of them stubbornly survived. Only when the high-sequence experts among the drowned people joined the battlefield did his men begin to dwindle rapidly. This was because these tentacle monsters with fish-like heads were far more powerful than even the chosen of Valhalla. Heavy footsteps could be heard clearly. A great axe was drawn and held before him. When Grandpa Clint turned around, the towering figure was only 5 meters away. It was a humanoid monster nearly 3 meters tall. It had a shark-like head, but beneath it, the rest of its body was remarkably human. At this stage of evolution, the 4 tentacles that comprised its arms could now freely coil together, forming a single arm indistinguishable from a normal human's. The end of the arm even branched into 4 fingers, forming a hand capable of grasping weapons. As for the 6 tentacles that had originally been lumped together, serving as its base, 3 of them now merged together to form 2 long legs. These sturdy and powerful tentacles could merge and separate at will, allowing this creature to fight flexibly both in the sea and on land. The shark monster, standing behind Clint, was now dragging a massive, 2-meter-long dead fish in its grasp. This was its weapon. It was waiting for Clint to turn around. As he turned, before he could even make any defensive moves, the shark monster swung the dead fish, its rows of sharp tail spines swirling in a fishy breeze. Clint hastily raised his axe to block. However, the wooden handle offered no resistance against the nearly 100-pound fish. With a crisp, cracking sound, the two-handed axe snapped in two. This was only the beginning of the attack. After its sharp dorsal fin severed the axe, the shark monster let out a high-pitched roar. Simultaneously, the dead, grayish-white fish in its grasp revived and opened its jaws. Its sharp, spiked jaws bit into the bare hide, but once it touched the smooth fur, it could no longer penetrate. "You ugly creature, is that all you can do?" Clint had fought for years and still survived. This thick, one-piece bear hide played a significant role. The old bears of the cold taiga were the undisputed masters of the mountains. Even against giant monsters that had survived prehistoric times, they relied on the thick protection of their hides to withstand a decisive battle. The bear hide alone weighed nearly 50 kilograms, comparable to a suit of fine steel knight's armor. After unleashing the first wave of attacks from the dead fish, Clint gripped the half-broken axe tightly and chopped it down with all his might. His target was the head of the dead fish that had just attempted to bite him. This wasn't the first time he'd encountered this fish-headed monster, having fought from dawn to dusk in Cloud Province. The chosen of the drowned path generally possessed strong defenses but weak offense. Their bodies were undead, immortal and indestructible. Completely destroying them was difficult. However, if one could simply break their weapons, their destructive power wouldn't be significant with just a few soft tentacles and a single fish head. With one blow, the axe severed the dead fish's head, its axe lodging in the bone. Before Clint could pull the weapon from the carcass, he had already raised the half-broken axe handle in his left hand. A ball of flame ignited from the cold, hard, spiked pine wood. Clint thrust the axe handle hard into the massive shark's skull before him. The monster let out another high-pitched howl. It felt no pain, only feared fire. The scorching wildfires generated by Old Man Clint's psychic energy were the only way to inflict pain on the drowning people. 6 tentacles covered its head, and the shark monster began to run aimlessly. Once on the balcony, Clint extended his foot and launched a powerful kick. The shark monster was instantly sent careening into the boundless sea beyond the castle. "Hold on, old man, you can do this." The monster's high-pitched roar made it impossible to conceal its form. He stepped on the dead fish's skull and wrenched out the half-broken axe. Clint gathered up all the weapons scattered on the ground and headed towards the room where the fire emanated. Pushing open the door, he saw a towering figure wrapped in damp felt. Though hunched, he still stood over 3 meters tall. Seawater poured from his feet, drenching the entire room. Seeing Clint approach, he silently turned, but did not reveal his face. Beneath a damp hood, an ancient bluestone mask loomed in the firelight. Clint could only make out through the slits between its eyes, a brilliant orange. Within them, a gleam of greed flickered. Gazing into those orange eyes, Clint showed no fear. "So, you are the leader of this bunch of scum, very good. You didn't hide behind me. This proves that, ugly as you may be, you're at least a capable person. Odin's people can consider you a match." With a soft pop, blazing flames erupted from his hands, quickly enveloping the axe. Squeezing the last ounce of strength from his body, he hurled the axe, a massive wheel of orange fire hurtling towards the Deep One's head. Unfortunately, as fellow old god believers, the gap between Sequence 7 and Sequence Great Perfection was as vast as a chasm. The Deep One didn't flinch, not even blinking. As the blazing axe hurtled toward his head, at some eerie moment, a shadow seemed to flicker through the air. The next second, a tentacle emerged from beneath a damp felt and snatched the flying axe securely midair. The broad-bladed axe, now half-handled, weighed approximately 30 kilograms. To be able to securely hold it midair with a tentacle was a feat no drowned dweller could achieve. However, seizing the axe was merely the first step in the Deep One's manipulation of the tiny human before it. It launched no offensive, nor did it move a single step from its position. Its damp tentacles gripped the flaming axe, holding the flame aloft like a lamp. Only then, through the blazing axe, did Clint see that the entire room was densely packed with thick, wriggling tentacles. The Deep One appeared to be standing silently in the center of the room. In reality, he had already surrounded the entire house with hundreds of tentacles. From the moment he opened the door and walked into the house, he was already in a cage. Chapter 377 Hunting Time, 3. The Deep One no longer knew how many years he had lived. Hundreds of years ago, he was a fisherman. He toiled daily, saved money, married, and had children. These memories lay hidden in his mind, like ancient memories from a past life. He could no longer recall his name, his wife's appearance, or how many children he had. He could no longer even remember his nationality. Ever since he was dragged down to the dark depths by that strange fish, he had lived in this strange form for far too long. So long, that he could no longer feel he had ever been human. Amidst the darkness and chaos, he carried out his superior's orders. Along with thousands of his compatriots, he polluted human lands, transforming innocents into his own kind. In the process, many of his companions perished, either by the Zoroastrian fire or by the holy light. Yet, the Deep One miraculously survived these cycles of destruction. Over the centuries, he rose from an ordinary farmer to a skilled hunter, now even ascending to the rank of priest of the abyss. An old Viking was hardly a formidable foe. Extending its tentacles, it easily caught a thrown axe. The Deep One gathered its lead arms, which filled the entire room, into dozens of ropes, tightly binding him. As layer after layer of thick tentacles formed dozens of ropes, enveloping him, the Deep One, with a low laugh, tightened its tentacles. The power of a demigod was simply beyond the reach of mortals. Furthermore, his target was a 62-year-old man, whose frame was inherently slender compared to that of a younger man. With two crisp cracks, Clint's proud head silently lowered, a trickle of blood escaping from the corner of his mouth. He released his hand, and the tightly grasped axe fell from his sturdy palm, hitting the stone floor with a resounding thud. In front of the Deep One, an old Viking wasn't worth his attention. Having expended so many resources lurking in Yun province, they had a single goal: to help the leader capture Alfred alive. Only by accomplishing this mission could the cult of Dagon, long hidden on the edge of the world, gain further support from the Illuminati. Seeing Clint dead, he released his tentacles and kicked him aside, closing his eyes and radiating his telekinesis. He could sense that the remaining psychic energy within him was no longer sufficient to summon such a vast volume of water. He had to find Alfred before sunrise. To do so, he could only unleash his spiritual sense, directing all the drowned people to meticulously search every inch of the valley. Time ticked by, and after about 10 minutes, darkness enveloped the cold stone chamber once again. In the pitch darkness, Clint, hidden in the corner of the room, opened his eyes. His left arm and 3 ribs were broken by the crushing force of the thick tentacles. The broken bones pierced his internal organs, causing excruciating pain. Yet, despite this, he managed to hold out for 10 minutes. No breath, no movement, nor did a sound. For all the cunning creatures of the forest, Feigning death is a crucial survival skill if they hope to prolong their lives. Odin's people are undoubtedly fearless warriors, but they must also possess the courage to temporarily withdraw from the battlefield, making their deaths more meaningful. Clint is a prime example. With his bones broken, even the slightest movement brought piercing pain. For a full 10 minutes, he held his breath, completing only one movement. He took the wine flask hanging from his belt. Furtive glances revealed the deep one, still hunched over, eyes closed, casting a spell. The flickering flames of the hearth shone on his back, drying the damp divination paper. He touched his back again, only the last hand axe remained in his belt. Clint knew he had to fight to the death. With his bones shattered, every expansion and contraction of his lungs would strain the wound. His breathing quickly shifted from gentle to heavy. He had to adapt his body to the severity of his injuries. A wave of pain washed over him, and with a low growl, the pain stimulating his muscles, he pulled himself up from the ground. The deep one turned to look at him, but a dark shadow soared high into the sky in a parabola. He sensed no psychic energy from the shadow, so in his haste, he chose not to dodge. Clint smiled wickedly. In that moment, he seemed to be the 12-year-old boy hunting in the snow again. His psychic energy flowed, and flames once again coated his hand axe. Then, he threw away the heavy bearskin. Throwing away the 50-pound weight, the old man soared into the air like an eagle. Just as the flagon was about to fall on the deep one's head, he struck the 3 pounds of liquor in midair with his axe. A brilliant flame ignited above the deep one's head. The fermented liquor brewed by the Vikings from mare's milk and barley became a rain of fire from the sky. Pure flame enveloped the deep one's head, instantly transforming him into a writhing ball of flame. The sudden onslaught of intense heat caused the deep one to howl in agony, and the hundreds of tentacles that filled the room began to dance wildly. Elder Clint was struck several more times, his shattered bones piercing deep into his organs. The sudden, excruciating pain left him sprawled on the ground, convulsing in agony. Yet, with a fierce resolve, he stood upright again. I haven't avenged my adopted daughter yet, I haven't torn that French master's head off yet. If a father can't avenge his daughter, how can I face her when I return? His eyes, suffused with rage, were already a dark crimson from the flames. He swung his hand axe at the writhing mass of flames before him, shattering the mask on the deep one's head. The ugly, grayish-white face beneath the mask had barely emerged when the flaming axe cleaved through its center. Hold on, old man, one more time. The pain radiating from his waist and abdomen nearly paralyzed him, yet Clint remained upright. The deep one, with its face severely wounded, was blinded, its tentacles thrashing wildly. Using this limited opening, Clint located the broad-bladed axe scattered on the ground. This time, his target was the deep one's legs. Tentacles emanated from his lower body, extending throughout the stone chamber. The axe ignited in flames, and Clint slashed at the deep one's legs with all his might. As the tangled mass of tentacles severed, he charged, transforming himself into a cannonball, scooping up the deep one and rolling them into the blazing fireplace. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 378 Hunting Time, 4. The tides receding, Alfred narrowed his eyes, surprised to see that the water in Cloud Province, which had almost spread across the entire valley, was rapidly receding. Floating corpses and deep-sea monsters, unable to escape, lay dangling in the black bean bushes, struggling to survive. Smoke billowed from the distant castle. Behind him, Ralph the Walker, armed with his signature 2-meter-long axe, led the entire militia of the Ralph Battle Academy into a wedge-shaped battle formation. Shield in one hand, axe in the other, the soldiers stood ready. On the other side, Gao in the Porcupine and his ferocious pirates also drew their weapons. They gazed at the engulfing castle, their eyes filled with greed. They could almost smell the scent of gold and silver scorching in the flames. However, the first thing they had to face was the tens of thousands of worm-attached who were stumbling towards them. Alfred was prepared. The English militiamen behind him wheeled several carriages. Buckets of fuel oil and black powder were stacked in the back. As the slow-moving parasites swarmed, closing within a kilometer of the front, the militiamen lit the fuses of their gunpowder barrels and simultaneously thrust several gleaming daggers into the horses' hindquarters. The frightened horses, dragging the burning gunpowder with them, madly charged towards the slowly approaching parasites. As they burst into the surging crowd, the mindless zombies clung to the horses, their withered hands forcibly scooping up horse flesh and stuffing it into their mouths. Their eyes were fixed only on the living. They ignored the gunpowder barrels that had fallen from the carriages, the burning fuses, and the kerosene that quickly spilt from the shattered barrels. Thus, when the explosions painted the sky crimson, all 30,000 parasites were engulfed in flames. Alfred hesitated to dispatch his troops. A cornered prey is the most dangerous. Rather than launching an attack and losing precious reinforcements to the zombies, it was better to let the spreading flames burn. Reinforcements could not, under the guise of saving lives, cost more lives. By the time the sun's first rays shone, most of the 30,000 worm-eaters had been killed or wounded in the flames. Feeling he could no longer wait, Alfred turned and looked at the cavalry behind him. "This is the first battle I've faced since the founding of the Normandy region. Right now, an evil spirit is attempting to desecrate our land. Many of our compatriots are fighting bloody battles against them in the castle within the valley. They have fought with tenacious spirit for a whole day and night, surrounded by an enemy dozens to their number. Our mission is to save our compatriots and banish the ancient evil from our land forever. For glory. For Odin. In the name of Duke Loki, I hereby order a charge." The deep blast of the horn rang out again, and 4,000 cavalrymen surged into the White Cloud Valley. The seawater, which had spread to the outskirts of the valley, nearly overflowing the valley floor, was rapidly receding. Although he didn't know the exact events, Alfred had a feeling it was related to the blaze in the castle. The drowned people and the sea monsters they drove were a people who relied on the sea for survival. As the power of the deep one waned, the waters receded, and the drowned people, deprived of the ocean's protection, were like fish forgotten on the shore. The blazing morning sun scorched their exposed limbs. The drowned people strained to stretch their limbs and tentacles, but the slippery tentacles were simply too slow to move across the surface. As 4,000 war horses galloped towards them, they heard the earth tremble and struggle to wriggle, but to no avail. Within 10 minutes, they were reduced to a pile of meaty paste clung to the ground under the trampling of the horses. The easy part was now complete. The waters within the valley had largely receded, but the castle remained a swamp. Seawater from the moat continued to pour into the basement, and the sounds of large groups of aliens could still be heard within the humid castle. Alfred stationed all of his English cavalry outside the castle to continue clearing out the drowned people and the few surviving parasites that remained in the valley after the tide receded. As for Gautern the Porcupine and Rolf the Walker, they led their men into the castle with him. The division of labor between the two forces was simple. Gautern sought wealth, Rolf sought battle. In terms of combat power, the trained soldiers and professional pirates under their command far outweighed the hastily assembled force of Clint. Rolf, axe-shouldered, marched straight through the main entrance without flinching. The pirates, on the other hand, used their signature skills, drawing their grappling hooks and throwing them over the eaves. After a whole winter of raiding, the pirates had learned their lesson from witnessing the opulent castles of the western continent's nobles. The possessions of wealthy lords were often stored in study rooms or bedrooms adjacent to their bedrooms. Pirates raided primarily for wealth, so they could simply charge into the bedrooms to steal the safes, rather than entering through the hall and provoke the unnecessary guards. Alfred, too, drew his silver sword and followed Gautern the Porcupine up the wall. If any of Clint's men survived, they were likely in the castle's upper floors. Numerous high-sequence warriors from the drowned people remained within the castle. After the Vikings stormed the castle, the sounds of slaughter rang out once again. Raised in poverty, these Viking hunters had fought the beasts of the sky-breaking mountains since childhood, giving them a natural understanding of monsters. Furthermore, they had been entering Asgard repeatedly over the past 2 years. Compared to the beasts that inhabited the land of the dead, the land of frost, and the land of fire, the humanoid octopus that now appeared before them was as docile as a lamb. Wielding knives in their left hands and torches in their right, the pirates easily slew and incinerated the monsters. The ragtag pirates from the Visigothic and northern continents even attempted to cut off a few of the twisted tentacles to roast for flavor after the battle. The dark-skinned brethren of the northern continent were particularly renowned within civilized society for their ability to eat anything. When hungry, they would even stuff burning sand into their mouths to stave off hunger. In stark contrast to the pirates' excitement over their new toys, Alfred walked the corridors, broadsword in hand, shouting Clint's name. However, despite finding Faith Seaclaw and a few fishermen hidden in a rum barrel, there was no further response. It was clear that the vast majority of the 1,000 men Clint had brought into Cloud Province had perished in the ambush of the evil god. Clint Fuyuki is the fossil of my Hanshu village. He's the oldest salty old dog in the village. If any of us survive, it'll be him. Having witnessed Clint's remarkable feats over the years, Faith had every confidence in his ability to survive. The last time I saw him was when the seawater spread over the second floor. There are too many powerful high-sequence monsters in the castle. Most of the brothers suggested leaving the city to avoid it, but he was the only one who insisted on climbing up to the third-floor terrace. Let's go to the terrace and see if we can find him. Alfred rushed upstairs. At the corner of the stairs, he saw the scattered bodies of drowned people. Pushing open the heavy door, he saw a ground full of broken tentacles twitching uncontrollably, and a bloody figure lying flat on the ground. Master Clint, Alfred stepped forward quickly. Don't worry, not dead yet. Clint was barely breathing, but he was still alive after all. He raised a finger and pointed to the extinguished fireplace not far away. The real boss must have dug through the floor under the fireplace and escaped. Follow the tunnel down, maybe we can catch up with him. Hurry. Chapter 379 Hunting Time, 5. Clint's battle against the Deep One was a battle of vastly unequal strength. Yet, despite this disparate power gap and a severely passive situation, this lifelong veteran managed to find the only possible way to defeat his opponent in the shortest possible time. Utilizing a half-filled flask of liquor and the burning fireplace within the house, he successfully cornered the Deep One. After centuries of survival, this perfected sequence of the drowning path felt his life in danger for the first time. Burned by the raging flames, he broke through the floor beneath the fireplace and burrowed into the seawater below. As for Clint, a chosen one of the fire berserker path, relying on his extreme resistance to fire, he extinguished the flames burning within his body and held out until reinforcements arrived, once again surviving a seemingly fatal battle. The Deep One had roamed the oceans for centuries. He had seen Variag mercenaries before, but this was the first time he had seen a berserker capable of summoning flames at will. Even this seemingly scattered militia could inflict such devastation. The Deep One couldn't imagine what kind of foe he had faced when the regular Viking army arrived. Alfred had been nowhere to be found, and the leader had long since vanished. Adhering to the principle of survival as paramount, the Deep One immediately retreated beneath the surface, signaling a retreat. The land-based worm-attached creatures couldn't leave, they remained behind the defenses, providing a formidable shield. As for all the other monsters roaming the surface, the Deep One commanded them to follow the receding tide, burrowing through deep wells from the surface and then into the underground river. The Deep One's greatest power lay in his ability to lead his men through any channel through which the current could flow. In less than half an hour, the surging waters had carried him from the underground channel to the seafloor. Once in the ocean, he was forever safe. But just then, the Deep One, having just entered the shallows, suddenly found himself facing a massive fleet. They lowered heavy chains, forming a vast iron net before him. Peering out of the ocean, he saw the double eagle of the Kingdom of Wessex. Ah! So what Alfred said was true. We actually caught a big fish today, brothers. Give me some oil. Aboard the massive flagship, clad in a fiery red cloak and sporting a delicate mustache, was Alfred's cousin, William. In the great battle with the Vikings last spring, Wessex lost nearly its entire army. Yet, William's navy never participated. His men became the most intact of the Wessex armies. After the war, Egbert focused on post-war reconstruction. William's entire fleet sat idle in the harbor, earning the disdain of the Wessex residents all winter. Countless elderly men, women, and even children pointed fingers at the sailors aboard the ships. Everyone else is heading to the battlefield, and only these cowards are cowering in the rear. Yeah, my 3 sons, who have spent their lives farming, are still able to pick up pitchforks to defend our country, and these guys have the nerve to eat idle meals in their harbor. Oh. Everyone knows that Captain William is a collateral relative of Egbert. This is the disadvantage of bringing family connections into the army. Disperse, disperse. The mere sight of these beasts makes me feel depressed. Honestly, this feeling is not pleasant. If they can kill the lone evil god, it will be a great achievement. Not to mention that all the holy bishops and monks in the fleet are eager to increase their sequence level. No one can refuse to kick a dog when it's down. Master Alfred is such a kind man. That's right. Such a lucky break has happened to us. Look at that old thing in the water. It's obvious he's been ripped off, thinking of us all the time. You're worthy of being my future king. The ocean occupies the vast majority of this planet, And for tens of thousands of years, a constant stream of ancient gods have fallen into it. Giants have long been able to walk underwater. Even powerful beings like the Blood Creator chose to build their sunken city beneath the sea when they first descended. In many extinct civilizations, marine life has long occupied a higher position in the food chain. When everything on land was decimated, the giants of the ocean were able to hide in the abyss, escaping civilization's destruction. Humanity, naturally, developed strategies to deal with these sea monsters. Barrel after barrel of black fuel oil was dumped into the sea. The extremely lightweight black kerosene floated on the surface, forming an endless black curtain. The deep ones, their sea beasts, and the drowned people attempted to break through the iron net, but over 30 massive ramming ships, heavy anchors dropped and linked together by chains, were utterly impenetrable. Furthermore, the ship's steel bases, constructed from nearly 5-centimeter thick steel plates, were impenetrable to the tentacles. Fish, try this seafood stew and see if it's good, brothers. Throw lime on me. Quicklime first appeared in ancient Greece, 8th century BC. The great city builders discovered that by forging materials with high calcium carbonate content, such as chalk, limestone, and beach, at high temperatures, they could produce a snow-white gel. Mixing this with sand, gravel, and a small amount of water, it formed a strong caulking material, suitable for filling gaps between stone blocks. The flames created by pouring fuel into the sea would only float on the surface. The true lethality to marine life came from the bags of quicklime dumped into the sea. When it came into contact with large amounts of water, it instantly radiated a scorching heat. The Lord says, I have seen my people in chains, I have heard their cries. Today, I will lead you away from suffering, ascend into the realm of hope. Chanting gospel prayers, William, holding the holy cross, watched his men pour bucket after bucket of lime into the sea. In his eyes, these rotten fish and shrimp were all dead. The shallows near the shore immediately began to boil, with drowned people and sea monsters struggling in their death throes. They were fearless, but they were still fish. Countless drowned people perished in the boiling water. The deep diver had lived for centuries, and today was arguably the most humiliating battle he had ever fought. First, with his demigod body, he was nearly roasted by an ordinary old Viking. Unexpectedly, just as he had broken through, he fell into the boiling water again. However, those who had reached great perfection of sequence were, after all, powerful beings infinitely close to being gods. Moreover, the sea was the home turf of the priests of the abyss. On land, he could only unleash 3/4 of his abilities. Once in the ocean, the demigod's true power remained unmatched by mortals. The deep diver burst through the sea of fire, leaping high into the air. Upon entering the water, his body expanded to nearly 10 meters in length, revealing the slender tail of a fish-like deity. With a long roar in mid-air, he swung his enormous tail and plunged back into the water. From the rear of the fleet, several thick tentacles, nearly 100 meters in height, suddenly extended. Chapter 380 Hunting Time, 6. In the Middle Ages, humanity's understanding of what lay hidden in the deep sea was extremely limited. In that era, building a ferry capable of long-distance navigation was a pinnacle of technology, unattainable for even small nations. Globally, only a handful of nations possessed shipbuilding technology, leaving other smaller nations to trade gold and silver for ferries. Crossing the ocean was a life-threatening adventure for most, let alone diving underwater to discover what lay beneath the surface. Among the chosen of Valhalla, the Siren's Path and Sailor's Path possessed the most advanced submersible capabilities. Those of these two paths could only submerge for about half an hour, reaching depths of no more than 100 meters. As for the trenches, which often reached depths of hundreds or even thousands of meters, no one in that era could reach them. Except for the sentient abyssal priests of the cult of Dagon. As one of the few anomalous individuals within the ancient gods' faith who relied on the ocean for survival, the deep diver had visited most of the world's hidden ocean floors. He knew that there lay another abyssal world, as vast as the human world. Thousands of meters beneath the dark waters, hundreds of fish, algae, and bioluminescent creatures form their own unique ecosystem. The shallows have no connection to them. The deep sea is their world. For centuries, the Deep One has used various methods to cultivate a group of ancient creatures that obey his command. The giant octopus that appeared behind the fleet was none other than his ally from the abyss. Its tentacles stretched out from the surface of the sea, rising high into the sky, obscuring the sky like a castle in the sky. Before William could even utter a cry of surprise, a series of crisp, creaking sounds echoed beneath his feet. Looking down, he saw another tentacle had already swept up his flagship, effortlessly lifting it high into the air. Those lost ones sitting in darkness, bound in pain and chains, have disobeyed God's words and scorned the will of the supreme preacher. They are lost, unable to see the light. They fall, but no one helps them. So, in their distress, they cry out to the Lord to deliver them from their calamity. William was completely terrified. As a devout believer in the Holy Lord, he could do nothing in this perilous situation. With trembling lips, he could only recite the gospel prayer that emerged in his mind, beseeching the Holy Lord to bestow blessings and deliver him from the sudden catastrophe. However, the Holy Lord was never a servant who could respond at his beck and call. As the flagship was lifted tens of meters into the air by its tentacles, William saw a sleek, gigantic octopus head slowly emerging from the waters not far away. It was a terrifying beast, pale in color, with scarlet eyes. Just the head itself was almost the size of a castle. Dozens of tentacles, hundreds of meters long, extended from the soft head. The sturdy arms made the 30 French longships of the North Sea Fleet look like delicate toys. Tiny and fragile. The octopus head rising from the sea was the last thing he would see. As the flagship shattered, he plummeted from the sky, and before he could even utter a scream, he was devoured by a shark that emerged from the sea. The deep diver had been able to survive in the perilous human society to this day because he was not one for seeking success or taking risks. In White Cloud Valley, when he realized he might die at the hands of Master Clint, even if there was only a 10% chance, he did not fight and immediately fled. Failure to complete the mission was of no concern. For the time being, no one within the cult could threaten his position. However, if you were seriously injured, his bloodthirsty subordinates would unite and devour him in a matter of seconds. It was precisely because of this extreme inquisitiveness that the deep diver had been able to survive time and again. The octopus monster could not be his only reinforcement. Behind it, dozens of gray sharks raised their fins, and a swarm of bloodthirsty flying fish swarmed. The octopus used its massive tentacles to easily overturn the toy-like boats on the surface. As for the boiling seawater, it simply sprayed 2 streams of cold ink, diluting the quicklime in the ocean and extinguishing the boiling water. As for the anchors and chains used to block the sea, these fragile human toys were as fragile as rotten wood in his hands. With 2 casual swings of its massive tentacles, the North Sea Fleet's defenses collapsed. After freeing all the drowned people who had followed him out of White Cloud Valley, the Deep One swam swiftly to his old friend's side, using his remaining wrist tentacles to climb atop his head. Mortals, I hope you remember that the vast ocean belongs to me forever. Within the ocean, the great rolling cult will be unmatched. As he spread his arms, one after another, enormous sharks, each about 20 meters long, followed, seeking the scent of blood in the sea, and embarking on a slaughtering feast. The 30 French carved longships of Wessex's North Sea Fleet were shattered to dust by the octopus's attack. Sailors fell into the sea, subsequently devoured by the fish. Seeing their advantage overwhelming, the Deep One did not hastily order a retreat. Most of the time, the humans the cult of Dagon found weren't meant to satisfy the hunger of these hungry creatures. Humans were rare in the ocean, and the few unfortunate ones they managed to pull into the waters were transformed into drowned men. Under these circumstances, the fish simply couldn't devour fresh human life. Meanwhile, with over 2,000 sailors aboard these 30 ships, the Deep One's men had a rare opportunity to feast. Standing atop the octopus's skull, he looked up. High in the sky, he seemed to see a turquoise dragon eagle circling. It was the suzerain's mount. The creature must have sensed the situation was dire, and without notifying him, it summoned its mount and fled. The Deep One's heart remained unmoved. He felt no anger, but rather believed it was the right decision. If a man does not work for himself, he will be punished by heaven and earth. It was precisely by relying on these 8 words that the Illuminati had survived through civilization after civilization, remaining hidden within human society until now. Having lived so long, the Deep One's eyes had become incredibly penetrating. The vast majority of those who were loyal, kind, and righteous had fallen into the dust of history. Their stories were never sung or recited, for the kings would simply command bards to appropriate their stories for their own use. Only those who were ruthless, could endure forever. That's all. This is just our first collaboration. If there's a chance, this old man will find me again. The sea gradually calmed from its turbulent state. All those who fell into the water perished as fish swarmed. The Deep One sighed deeply, and at that moment, he felt a sudden warmth on his back. Something was amiss. It was only early spring, but the sea was still icy cold, and there was even snow on the land. Even if the morning sun appeared, how could there be the pain of being burned by the scorching sun? The deep diver turned around and saw 7 figures standing silently on the sea in the face of the golden light. Chapter 381 Killing Time, and is this a living being or an illusion? The deep diver blinked hard, unable to discern whether what he saw was real. 7 monks in dark crimson robes floated above the surface of the sea. The morning sun's rays outlined their forms, yet as the waves rolled over the sponge, the light distorted and shifted, their figures suddenly faded in and out of view. It was like a mirage refracted by clouds, a mirage on the sea or in the desert. 24 years later, the depths of my heart remain. I huddle in the crevices of the shadows, like an ant, hiding from the deathly light that buries everything. A series of low chanting reached his ears, and even with an army of sea monsters around him, an uncontrollable sense of danger still rose from the deep diver's heart. What is this? Are they living beings or illusions? Why do I feel so hot when I hear the prayers? Faced with danger, he didn't panic, but leaped into the sea. The flames on the sea surface had been extinguished by the octopus's icy ink spray, cooling the surface back to freezing temperature. However, after jumping into the water, he felt no sense of coolness. The agonizing chanting that continued in his ears only exacerbated his unbearable heat. What kind of evil magic is this? This light resembled that of a holy bishop, but its power was far greater than that of those charlatans. Judging by their attire, they resembled the red-robed lamas of Tibet. But those monks were primarily combatants. They knew no magic. How come I've never seen these terrifying monks before? Could they be the outer gods who descended in recent years? Why would they attack me? Furious and alarmed, the Deep One writhed in anxiety, attempting to lead his men through the blockade of these strange monks. However, a resilient barrier of light suddenly appeared in the ocean. Waves crashed against the barrier, as if against a sheet of soft glass. After ramming its body several times, the giant octopus, even with its tentacles, struggled to break through the soft barrier of light. The deep diver immediately realized they had run into a tough opponent. A surge of crisis gripped him. He knew he had to find a way to escape. Otherwise, he would be doomed here. All drowned people, follow me. Focus on this wall of light and smash a hole. Over the centuries, he had seen some outer gods, old gods, and other evil gods. His intuition told him that the red-robed monks floating on the sea were likely minions. The true form of this unknown deity hadn't even descended yet. We must hurry, otherwise, today will be the death anniversary of all of us drowned people. Boom, boom, boom. Countless gigantic sea beasts continuously rammed into the vast barrier of light that separated heaven and earth. But their struggles were futile. The barrier of light stood firm in the ocean, like an eternal law. Seeing that escape was impossible, the deep diver attempted to return to the underground tunnel and escape to the surface. However, the passage leading underground had long since collapsed. He and all the other drowned were completely trapped in this tiny space. Even more terrifying, with each burst of intense movement, his lingering heat seemed to intensify. The icy water offered no cooling effect, and instead, a faint white mist began to rise from his skin. What the hell was this terrifying thing? In despair, the Deep One surfaced. He gazed at the rising sun in the sky and was surprised to discover a slender figure in the center of the fiery red sun. Could it be a person? A person, standing on the sun, staring at the light source for so long that tears welled in his orange eyes. Blinking hard, he seemed to see the radiant figure emerging from the sun grow larger and larger. Finally, it coalesced into the shape of a human woman in midair. Who are you? The Deep One asked gravely. He made no further attempt to escape. Instead, he rolled over and once again stood atop the octopus. The disparity in power between outer gods can sometimes feel like an insurmountable chasm. Since brute force is doomed to failure, it's better to try to find a glimmer of hope through conversation. As a grand perfect sequencer of the drowned path, advancing sequence levels is no longer a necessity for the Deep One. He's willing to try, no matter what the other party offers, as long as his life is spared, even if it means betraying Dagon. A resilient creature of the sea, my name is Dialena Lightdead, gradually emerging from the sun's rays. Dialena, hovering in the air, descended before the Deep One in a shimmering golden light. She still wore the hexagram mask that covered her entire face, revealing only a smooth, white chin. In the radiance of the universe, others call me Lightdead. I am the saint of the kingdom of Mercia. After a brief self-introduction, Dialena gently extended her snow-white hand. The deep one soared uncontrollably into the sky, breaking through the wall of light and soaring before her. You possess a resilient soul, which is invaluable. The Lord of Light told me a great fish will soon take the bait. His judgment remains as accurate as ever. My daughter is pregnant. I need to refine your spirit into psychic energy and infuse it into her womb, welcoming life of light. If you have any last words, say them now. The deep one's eyes shrank to the size of pinholes. This powerful deity needed no reason to kill him, just like a mortal slaughtering a chicken. Only then did he finally understand why the Illuminati, who had for centuries scorned the cult of Dagon, had unexpectedly chosen him as an ally. Capturing Alfred was a lie. The real plan was to use his power to massacre all the inhabitants of Cloud Province and expel the French lord from Mercian territory. Whether Alfred was dead or alive, he, like himself, was merely a pitiful pawn in this grand chess game. The overlord's true ally wasn't him, but the kingdom of Mercia, whose land had just been taken by the Vikings, Yun province, and himself. All of this was his pledge of allegiance to Mercia. Excellent, what a diabolical scheme. Illuminati, how could such a terrifying organization exist in this world? Suspended in mid-air by Diana, the Deep One had no means of resistance. The sheer overwhelming power left him with only the wisps of golden light beneath his skin, gathering in Diana's hands and transforming into a deep blue gaseous orb. It was the psychic energy he had accumulated over centuries of cultivation. The Lord of Light thanks you for your service to him. I grant you entry to the gate of heaven, young sea creature. Embrace the warmth of light. Stripped of his cultivation, the Deep One's uncontrollable body was slowly manipulated by Diana into the hands of 7 red-robed monks. Keep his body. We may need it in our next plan. Feed the psychic orb to Elizabeth. A bead of the true God, enough to nourish the baby in her belly. Remember, all of us are dust illuminated by the light. Coming to this world, we have only one mission, to welcome the birth of the Son of God. Chapter 382 Shyandrin Mountains. While the warm breezes of early spring blew away the snow from the English Isles, Scandinavia remained shrouded in ice and snow. April marked the end of winter. Spring here wouldn't truly arrive until at least June. Clad in a thick wolfskin coat, Loki stood atop a lone peak. Behind him followed Marindin, Moklash, and the remaining Viking dukes of Scandinavia. 22 years after his rebirth, he was finally able to appreciate the magnificent scenery of Scandinavia. It's true that when food is plentiful, etiquette is cultivated. When food is plentiful, honor and disgrace are cultivated. No wonder, during the Dark Ages, when most Westerners were illiterate, only the Tang dynasty in the East could compile the 300 Tang poems. The Iliads and the Decameron, sung in the Western continent, are all products of the heyday of ancient Greek civilization. At this time, in the Western continent, aside from the Bible, which every noble possessed, perhaps only Beowulf and the Song of Roland, heroic hymns passed down orally by bards, remained. Before everyone's eyes, dozens of blue giants, nearly 10 meters tall, toiled silently. They dragged huge boulders from hidden corners of the frigid seabed and, in just 1 year, constructed a towering stone fortress within the Skybreak Mountains. Built into the mountainside, the frost giants used the natural steps formed by the solid rock to build layer upon layer of meticulous walls. Watching intently, Loki noticed that since the portal had been permanently opened, nearly all the frost giants in prison within its cages had emerged, returning to the human world under his guidance. Marindin stared in astonishment at what he saw. Behind her stood a series of Viking dukes, including Duke Asker Wolf of Wolf Creek and Duke Varnalscrew of the Bay. Loki entered Asgard and led the frost giants out. None of them knew about this. Only the current Duke of Riverdale, Angus Moklash, gulped down a strong drink without comment. The frost giants were the first group of outer gods raised by Loki. After the complete destruction of the provinces of Dragon's Breath and Frost Ridge, even if their numbers were tenfold, they could hide there without detection. However, at this time, Marindin O'Sullivan was the current Viking queen. As her ally, he had an obligation to make her aware of all her people. Everyone stood quietly at the edge of the taiga, a boundary agreed upon by Loki and the Frost Giant King. Vikings living in Scandinavia would not cross this boundary without permission. When visiting, visitors could only stand at the edge of the taiga and wait for the king's guards to escort them in. Any Vikings who attempted to force their way across the border were at the Frost Giants' mercy. Similarly, when the Frost Giants leave the Skyfall Mountains and enter human settlements, they must also prepare for possible attacks. Nearly half an hour later, the Frost Giant King's envoy arrived. He brought out a massive wooden pallet that looked as if it had been hewn from a 1,000-year-old tree. Loki nodded to his left and right, and everyone stepped onto the pallet in unison. However, at the end of the group, an English girl dressed in luxurious mink fur hesitated to take a step. In desperation, Loki grabbed her hand and forcibly dragged her over. This person was Alice L., the hostage given to him by King Lii of Northumbria. Throughout the winter in the Rainfall Highlands, Alice became a major problem for Loki. Perhaps unable to suppress the onset of puberty, the 14-year-old girl constantly made subtle attempts to seduce Loki. On several occasions, she even hid in his bed, clad in a thin veil. In the Dark Ages, no one paid much attention to the idea of an adopted father seducing his daughter. But as a time traveler, he couldn't possibly seduce an underage girl. Worse still, this adopted daughter was a hostage under his command, so he couldn't treat her too roughly. After much deliberation and consultation with Elizabeth, Loki could only grant her a position, sending her to the river valley as an envoy to the Kingdom of Normandy. The position was fake. The real purpose was to take this lustful underage girl away from him. Even if she slept with 100 Vikings in the river valley, out of sight and out of mind, Loki would certainly be happy to reduce the number of hostages from 4 to 3. A whole winter, a pregnant wife, and 5 children in the house, it was almost driving his brain to pieces. Standing on trays, the frost giants carried the small humans like a tray of food into the woods. After walking for a while through the dense forest, they arrived at a round table made of flat stone piers. Frost giant King Oran, known as Avalanche, sat at the table. The midday winter sun shone down on him, awakening an age-old god. Duke Loki, we meet again. A round plate was placed on the table, allowing Loki and his companions to at least see the giant king's face. Besides them, there was also a plate of half-cooked dragon heads, roasted by flames. Heads of various types were piled up like a mountain. Pointing at the massive dragon head beside him, Loki asked, "It seems you've been getting along well this winter. Judging by their appearance, these dragons were likely the unfortunate ones captured in the Dragon Mountains during the invasion of Wessex last spring." They taste okay, but they're a little less impressive than those from 1,000 years ago." With that, Oran reached out and grabbed the dragon head. The hard dragon horns and scales felt as fragile as potato chips in his mouth. The giant devoured the head with a swift, crunching swiftness, like devouring multiple, crisp apples. What a pity. The trolls, sirens, and leprechauns are all gone. Otherwise, this land would be a paradise. The giant king grabbed another one. Alice Eller was so frightened she could barely stand. Everyone present was a savage native who had grown up in Scandinavia. Compared to them, Alice, who had never seen even a hungry wolf or a violent bear, had no idea such terrifying things lurked in her own world. Seeing this, the giant king let out 2 scornful sneers. "Don't worry, little sister. Not all humans are born to be food for the gods. Old Odin just enjoys watching fights. As long as you can risk a spectacular slaughter for the bored gods, he won't dare to turn you into food. After all, these Aesir created us for a life and death struggle with these dragons." Chapter 383 Ancient Era. Arriving in the Frost Giants' territory and conversing with the Giant King several times, Loki finally learned some of the secrets of the previous civilization from this living fossil, a creature that had survived from an ancient era. His dating suggests that the giants and dragons began ruling the land around 200,300 BCE, disappearing between 50,000 and 10,000 BCE. They were not outer gods, but rather were created by the Aesir under Odin's control. In this giant creation myth, the Aesir journeyed to the realm where the giants lived. The myths only vaguely hinted at the exact location of this outland. Loki speculated that this was most likely an alien planet distinct from Earth. They created male giants from Asgard's Nanmu wood, and female giants from beechwood, based on their preferred giant image, raising them in Jotunheim. However, simply raising giants quickly became boring. One boring night, the Aesir suddenly discovered that a number of new gods seemed to have appeared in a long-destroyed world. Among them were giant beasts called flying dragons, beasts capable of ruling the world. It turned out that the dinosaurs had not been completely wiped out on this planet. The remaining beasts, preserved by some force, had evolved and transformed, becoming even more powerful. The Frost Giant King could only recount the history he had heard, based on the knowledge stored in his mind. He couldn't understand how the dinosaurs had survived the wrath of the devastating gods. But Loki knew. He had seen the lizardman murals in the obsidian pyramid. A considerable number of dragons must have entered the Leviathan and survived the apocalypse with him. The discovery of the dragons filled the bored airseer with ecstasy. How about we pit our giants against these flying beasts in a survival contest? That way, we'll have exciting battles to watch every day. Once the idea came to mind, it became unshakable. Odin opened a passage from Asgard to the human world, naming it Midgard. When the giants arrived, they immediately became the dragon's sole rival. Primitive humanity, struggling to survive the dragon's claws and flames, finally found a brief respite. Humanity is the smallest of all the outer gods living on this planet. No one knows their origins, when, or how they arrived on Earth. The Giant King only knows from oral legends that their arrival seems to date back even longer than the giants' arrival in Midgard. Before the giants arrived, the soaring dragons had nearly wiped them out. Had the giants not successfully diverted the dragons' attention, these diminutive outer gods, egg-stealing and scavenging, would have been utterly extinct in no time. However, humanity possesses an extraordinary resilience. They are willing to serve the other outer gods without restraint, building temples for them, worshipping them, and learning their magic. In the eyes of all the other ancient gods and outer gods, this was unimaginably humble. No one would refuse a pack of useful dogs. During the hundreds of thousands of years of conflict between giants and dragons, humanity, a tiny tribe, managed to survive amidst the gods. Though humble, lowly, and devoid of dignity, living offered hope in the Giant King's memory. A key symbol of humanity's rise was the birth of Nuwa. Humanity before Nuwa's birth and humanity after her birth were two completely different kinds of people. Nuwa brought several changes to humanity. First, she created the institution of marriage. Before Nuwa's appearance, humans, like beasts, lived freely and promiscuously. Nuwa established a concept of a man and a woman forming a married couple and living together. The subsequent men farming, women weaving and family ties were all her work. Relying on the strong values of marriage and family honor, humans, who once lived in herds on the wasteland like wild beasts, quickly distinguished themselves from the beasts and developed into large, well-defined tribes. They transformed from scattered, swarming creatures into social creatures with clear organizational structures and divisions of labor. Once fragmented, these groups began to rely on kinship clans, rapidly growing in size. At that time, the giants and dragons were engaged in a raging battle. Countless outer gods descended upon Earth, some for research, some to watch, and some simply out of boredom. 20,000 years ago, Earth became a playground for the outer gods. Loki fully understood this feeling. Spectators watching a boxing match inevitably find their blood boiling with excitement, and many, engrossed in the action, even wish they could join the fray themselves, to spice up their boring existence. Unsurprisingly, this was precisely the reason these outer gods visited this vibrant planet. When the human population grew to considerable size, the first outer god purge in human history began. Loki couldn't pinpoint the exact time of this brief period, but he roughly estimated it to be between 50,000 and 10,000 BCE. The battle-obsessed giants and dragons were astonished to discover, in this deserted corner, that these tiny, insect-like creatures had grown so numerous, each rapidly growing in power. As powerful as Loki was today. After drinking the golden potion, he activated the sparse ancient blood within him, degenerating into the Viking ancestors of tens of thousands of years past. He possessed no faith, no order level, only a terrifyingly strong physique. He could survive underwater for 7 days, leap 30 meters, and run for 3 days and 3 nights without fatigue. Even facing the Crimson Creator, a tiny human could still hold his own in a one-on-one battle. This human army gave the outer gods their first glimpse into the power of an army. When a group of powerful individuals are unified, commanded, and obey a single command, the power they unleash is immense. Most outer gods were forced to flee. It was also during this time that the frost giants were defeated by Olaf, the bloody conqueror, and driven back to their former homeland. Nuwa's next great feat was to completely block the outer gods' access to the human world. This was what Loki wanted to know most. Based on his understanding of the truth, the outer gods couldn't have entered the human world by descending from space in spaceships, like the aliens in science fiction films. The legendary Nuwa mending the sky certainly wasn't like mending a broken pot, boiling some molten iron to fill the hole. Based on the knowledge he had stored in his mind, Nuwa most likely did 2 things. 1. She hid Earth from the outer gods' eyes, preventing them from discovering its coordinates. 2. She sealed a wormhole, isolating a rift in space and time. The Frost Giant King's memory of Earth's history ended there. He had no idea what happened to human civilization after they were driven back to Asgard by the bloody conqueror Olaf. Loki's two greatest questions remained unanswered. First, was Nuwa an outer god, or the first of the new gods of human origin? Later portrayals of Nuwa vary widely, and different texts often contradict each other. In classic texts from the Qin and Han dynasties, such as the Classic of Mountains and Seas, the Huinanzi, and the Chusi, Nuwa is depicted as an ordinary human. However, in the Classic of Yao, compiled by advisors under the Yan and Wang emperors during the Shang and Zhou dynasties, Shi and Fuxi are depicted as having human heads and snake bodies, their tails entwined. Even earlier, during the reign of Emperor Qiao, the Jiuli tribe circulated an ancient text called the Nine Provinces Great Wilderness Book. In the Great Wilderness Book, Nuwa is depicted as a frog, with a swollen abdomen, a human head and a demonic body, resembling a terrifying beast far more human than human. This is a secondary concern. The second question is Loki's true obsession. After Earth returned to the hands of Nuwa and humanity, what exactly did humanity undergo to cause such severe degeneration? With Loki's current physical condition, even hundreds of ordinary mortals could be easily defeated. Their degradation is so obvious that to survive on this planet, they must bring back the outer gods purged by Nuwa, build temples for them, and spread their faith. Is Nuwa really a selfless and kind deity? Chapter 384 Dragon Tomb. Transmigrate gods into the future of humanity, and humans into the future of the chickens, ducks, geese, and other livestock slaughtered daily by humans. It's easy to grasp a simple truth: they have no need to show mercy to humans. Mortals need power. When the power granted by the gods far exceeds their own cultivation, the vast majority of mortals on this planet will become servants of the gods. The gods have absolute control over them, just as humans control the chickens and ducks in a slaughterhouse. As long as they can be slaughtered and eaten, they're all that matters. If a farmer even considers the well-being of the chickens in the coop, no one would consider him merciful. Everyone would think he's crazy. Similarly, by blocking the passage for the outer gods to enter the human world and then taking possession of all humanity, this god would become the sole true god in heaven and earth. Would she continue to selflessly help humanity as always? Loki, hailing from the 21st century and having witnessed a true face of human society, completely disbelieved this. To date, no one he had spoken to knew what exactly happened during this period. Only two things were certain. 1. Humanity underwent a massive decline. 2. Tens of thousands of years later, between 6000 and 4000 BCE, Gaia, the Earth Mother, Militor, Amun the Hidden, Horus the Sun God, and Jehovah the Holy Lord, these outer gods, returned to human civilization. The spirits from the outer space, entering human society, began wreaking havoc once again. The outer gods of the Western continent even launched two godlike wars, involving large numbers of humans. This all ended only 6,000 years later, when Qin Shi Huang unified the Seven Kingdoms and began the second round of outer god purges. And what exactly happened in human civilization between the time of Nuwa mending the sky and this period? The Frost Giant King couldn't answer this question, and there's no record in 21st century documents. Perhaps only the immortal lizardman of the Illuminati could offer a definitive answer this time. Loki wasn't just chatting with the Frost Giant King on his visit to Scandinavia. He had risen from Duke of Storm's End to the de facto ruler of Normandy. While his title remained Duke, he served under Macklendon. However, it was widely acknowledged that his actual status rivaled that of any king in the English Isles. He had now successfully conquered two wealthy provinces. Now that he had entered civilized society, he must manage his territory according to its rules. His top priority was developing maritime trade. While the English Isles boasted fertile soil, their hard currency was extremely scarce. Compared to Scandinavia, the English Isles were a paradise, but compared to the French duchy across the Channel, their yield and quality were mediocre. The stingy French nobles would not sell their precious seeds to the English. Even if a small amount was smuggled back to the English Isles, farmers, after carefully planting their crops, found that without French soil, their crops would not thrive. In terms of mineral resources, the English Isles' mineral reserves were even inferior to those of Scandinavia. As for other options, such as population, religion, and technology, they were all mediocre. To quickly establish a foothold in Normandy, he needed a powerful commodity that most countries couldn't mass-produce but was widely in demand by the people of the Western continent. Loki immediately thought of the frost giants he had brought from Asgard. The Frost Giant King had once secretly revealed that he knew the location of the dragon tomb. Throughout the human world, dragon bones are a precious resource. Tang merchants traveled thousands of miles, laboring for a whole year across the Silk Road to cross the land bridge to Constantinople. They brought porcelain, tea, and spices from the Eastern Tang dynasty, and on their return journeys, they loaded their camel caravans with glass, cheese, and dragon bones from Constantinople. The most precious of these were dragon bones, as the dragon race of the Eastern Tang dynasty had been completely exterminated by sword cultivators centuries ago. The demand for dragon bones among the Eastern continent's alchemists was no less than the Western continent's passion for tea. Dragon bones, used medicinally, can heal broken bones, sprains, and even alleviate osteoporosis in the elderly. They are also an excellent source of strength for warriors when used to make wine. Nearly all young monks, before building their foundation, must drink a medicinal wine made from dragon and tiger bones for several years to prepare their bodies for this purpose. The demand for dragon bones is immense, not only in the Eastern Tang dynasty, but also in the Zoroastrianism and the holy bishops. The Arab Empire relied on two powerful weapons for its conquests, the Fire Knights and the Moa Knights. When feeding the fire horses or Moas, adding dragon bone powder to their feed greatly enhances the mount's combat capabilities. As for the holy bishops, the highest quality papal texts are traditionally crafted from ground dragon bones mixed with colored stone powder. It's rumored that a high sequence chosen one holding this scripture can even converse with Heavenly Father and hear the divine will in person. For this reason, the price of dragon bones has remained high, often to the point of being unavailable. After a year's journey, unwilling to return empty-handed, merchants from the East continent even stayed in Constantinople, waiting daily at the trading houses run by the Plantagenets to scout for dragon bones. They wouldn't depart until they had secured a sufficient supply. The Duchy of France, blessed with fertile soil, was a haven for dragons. Its near monopoly on the dragon bone trade had ensured its enduring strength. No one dared challenge the Plantagenets' throne. Loki was well aware of the powerful nation of France, situated across the sea from the English Isles. He believed that only by exploiting the dragon tombs discovered by the frost giants and recovering the dragon bones accumulated there for tens of thousands of years could Normandy be rapidly transformed into a formidable force on the continent. Only in this way could this impoverished nation rapidly accumulate initial capital. With wealth, the population loss caused by years of war could be rapidly addressed. As Loki conversed with a giant king, the frost giants were already carrying bundle after bundle of enormous bones from the forest. These were the dragon bones they had retrieved from the dragon mounds beneath the sea. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, when giants and dragons engaged in a mortal conflict across these vast lands, dragons swarmed across Earth like birds, densely packed in everywhere. Like all large creatures, dragons, when near death, naturally seek out their designated habitats. Over time, a vast accumulation of dragon bones accumulated within the dragon mounds. However, over the course of 100,000 years, what was once land had long since become sea. The giant king still remembered the dragon mound's location, but now only these terrifying giants, capable of walking underwater, could delve into the depths and pull out the bones, eroded by time to sheen as glossy as crystal. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 385 Dilemma. Loki reached out to touch the cold dragon bone before him, a wave of worry thick in his heart. Expecting the dragon bones in the dragon mound to remain pristine after hundreds of thousands of years was utterly impossible. Over time, they had become as solid as stone, their surface coated with a dense, glazed patina. Soaking them in wine was out of the question. No one would throw a stone into a wine flask. As for using it as feed, feeding livestock with stone dust seemed even less feasible. Yet, this was the one commodity in Normandy that Loki had pondered all winter, the one thing they had that only they could offer, the one thing no one else had. True, the Cold Stone family owned a fleet that could annually hunt whales in the polar regions and harvest whale oil, but that was ultimately the Frost people's business. As a duke, Loki couldn't just take over a fully integrated production chain. The most he could do was collect a 10% tax. Adhering to the business philosophy that scarcity makes things valuable, Loki had come this time to first harvest a batch from the Frost Giant King, then sailed to Paris to see if there was a market for it. His first westward crossing on a three-masted bark 3 years ago was like opening Pandora's box. Since then, years of war have left him with no respite. In just 3 years, the inhabitants of the three provinces of Dragon's Breath Plateau, Riverdale, and Frost Ridge have dwindled to just 20,000. Of these, only 2,000 are still capable of wielding a great axe. While the population has drastically shrunk, the territory has steadily expanded. These last 2,000 Viking warriors are Loki's only remaining asset. He needs to use them to the fullest extent possible to maintain the two provinces' position in the English Isles. In his transition from a pirate gang to a maritime trading nation, this deep-sea dragon tomb is his only bargaining chip. He looked at Macklendon, and the Viking queen spread her hands, also expressing a helpless expression. Dragon bone fossils dating back hundreds of thousands of years have never been seen in the civilized world of the western continent. Even Merindon couldn't say for sure whether this thing was truly valuable. However, now that things had come to this, there was no choice but to fight. Calling on his men to drag the massive dragon bone onto the cart, Loki was just about to wave goodbye to the giant king when a black raven descended from the sky, a red scroll tied to its talon. This was the code Loki and Elizabeth had agreed on. Papyrus of this color was only used when bloodshed erupted within the territory. As soon as he opened the scroll and read the first word, his heart sank. Duke Loki, I must admit, we're in great trouble. 3 days later, Loki, returning overnight, spotted Egbert and Alfred before he even reached the coastline. Before he could even greet them, Egbert, Lord of Wessex, approached first. He had assumed these Vikings would inevitably offend these higher-ranking French lords at some point, but he had never expected that day to arrive so soon. What has happened? Loki asked, frowning. An hour later, upon entering the church and seeing old Clint, swathed in bandages, Loki pieced together the full story from Alfred's detailed account. As expected, the entire incident was a conspiracy by the Illuminati. The Illuminati were as flawless as their legends claimed. This invasion of the evil god was like dirty water. Once it was poured on him, he couldn't wash it off, no matter what the consequences. If they successfully captured Alfred, they could use his life to coerce Egbert into collaborating with the Illuminati. If they failed, that didn't matter either. 724 French citizens and 31,042 English citizens had died in a war they had started. The Plantagenets would surely hold Loki responsible for this. On the grassland, the lion had no time to listen to the hyena's excuses. The high-ranking French lords wouldn't listen to his explanations about this as an invasion orchestrated by the Illuminati, or your people were prepared and planned to ambush me. When Loki married Elizabeth, aside from the rulers of the 7 kingdoms of England, none of the Duchy of France, the Free City of the Visigoths, or the Greater Bavaria sent a single noble. Not even a single envoy came to offer congratulations. They simply didn't recognize the place of these Viking barbarians in the civilized world. As for this sudden war, one thing everyone knew, Clint had indeed struck the first blow. Despite his shattered bones and covered in bandages, the old man, upon seeing Loki, still tried to rise and roared, I didn't bring shame upon Hanshu village. In front of Egbert and the nobles of the English Isles, he openly admitted that he had first struck down those French bastards. Loki smiled bitterly and shook his head, consoling the old man. In Scandinavia, swinging a great axe at a foreigner wouldn't incur public outrage, it was rather something to show off. However, this was a civilized society after all. The overlord had accurately identified Clint, a pure-blooded old salt of the earth, and must have known he would fall into his trap. Edward Longshanks has sent an envoy with an imperial decree demanding you appear in Paris to face the Inquisition. Egbert pulled a stiff, red scroll from his bosom. The scroll was made not of papyrus but of a higher quality paper. The back was even embellished with gold thread and hand-painted with magnificent golden flowers. It was the crest of the Plantagenet family. He'll only give you 7 days. After 7 days, he'll close the English Channel and sever all trade with us, just as he did 12 years ago. The Vikings didn't understand the horror of this matter, but that didn't mean Loki didn't. In the civilized world, only a behemoth with a vast territory and a large population like the late Qin dynasty could carve out a world of its own. The backward technology and industry of the Middle Ages meant that the manufacture of most daily necessities remained secret. Glass, papyrus, soap, pigments, tea, porcelain, spices, many essentials these 4 floating islands could not produce on their own. And all of these supplies were shipped from France through the English Channel. Note that the imperial edict did not specifically state no trade with Normandy. In the eyes of the lion, all hyenas were alike. They had no time to determine who was the murderer. Those who refused to obey would be punished together. No matter how you looked at it, this was a fatal proposition. Going would risk an ambush by an unknown enemy and, most likely, falling into the hands of the Illuminati. But not going would cause the markets of the 7 nations to fall into chaos within a week. The territory they had conquered at the cost of tens of thousands of Viking lives would not only face a drastic decline. How these 6 allies will unite to deal with themselves is also a huge question. Chapter 386 Decision. Once one embarks on the path of power, it's either victory or death. Only by truly sitting in the throne of a monarch can one understand the truth behind this statement. The path to power is never a one-man show. Even when a monarch seeks to recuperate, powerful neighboring states inevitably sense the danger and will do everything in their power to eliminate any budding enemies. This is every monarch's constant concern. In the river valley, Hanshu village showed a glimmer of potential, and Duke Bernard immediately led his army in an attack. Meanwhile, in the face of the Duchy of France, Normandy was no more than an ant. But it's better to crush an ant that could cause unrest than to let it go. Since the ant has given him this opportunity, why not step on it? Adoptive father, did I overreact? Alfred approached Loki and asked after the guests had departed. No, Loki said gravely. 5 months later, he had been forced to accept the slightly old-fashioned title of adoptive father, simply because of Alfred's ingrained habit. You did the right thing. Loki patted his shoulder and took the bloody axe from him. We must be familiar with politics and warfare so that our descendants will have the opportunity to study mathematics, philosophy, and business. Our descendants must study mathematics, philosophy, and business. Their descendants will be able to study painting, poetry, and music. Warfare is a necessary rite of passage for every monarch, but there is one thing you must be mindful of. Changing the subject, Loki turned and looked his adopted son straight in the eye. I asked you to follow Bakumbush so you could learn how to fight monsters. I didn't ask you to learn his suicidal ways. In the future, you will be the ruler of Wessex. When the burden of the entire nation rests on your shoulders, you must first learn how to protect yourself. But, foster father, during the 2 battles for Coldwater Village, didn't you? My situation was different, Loki interrupted him ruthlessly. 2 years ago, my village had only a little over 100 people. If we wanted to survive, everyone had to take up arms and fight. I have no choice, but you do. Thousands of troops are following you. There's no need for you to charge at the front alone. If you die, everyone in this land may have to continue groping in darkness for hundreds of years before the next ray of light appears. After bidding farewell to Alfred and returning to his bedroom, Elizabeth, pregnant, was already deep in sleep. Loki stroked her long golden hair, his gaze involuntarily directed towards the bloody axe in his hand. Force overcomes all odds. At a time like this, war is the most effective way to break the deadlock. Regardless of the Illuminati's influence behind France, it's clear that they intend to use their moral high ground to exploit the increasingly powerful English. In the Middle Ages, not even the video recorder, let alone the phonograph, would be invented 1,000 years later. In this era, trials had no so-called evidence. Individuals holding the moral high ground could use any means to secure victory. If he went to Paris, he would likely be annihilated in that city. But on the other hand, could Normandy still hold out for another war? Absolutely not. Last spring's invasion of England had mobilized the entire military from 3 provinces, a gamble on the nation's fate. He had gritted his teeth and managed to gather 6,000 Vikings. However, after the battle, fewer than 2,000 combat-ready veterans remained in the territory. To use a phrase often found in history books, a whole generation of men from the 3 provinces was annihilated. 2,000 troops sent to the Duchy of France wouldn't even be enough to fill a gap. After all, this country's land area alone is the size of 3 English islands. Its population is over 10 times greater. Faced with this dilemma, he felt hot and irritated. He walked to his bed, opened the window, and let the cool night air wash over him. This spring, the carpenter Sanji also died. Thinking back, of the 11 brothers who had originally set out from Hanshu village to cross England and enter the sleeping city, only 2 remained. They were all childhood friends. Some of them fell at the hands of old Valder, some died after drinking the poison of decay, some perished in battle with Wessex, and some were killed by the Cyclops spears. One general's success is built on the sacrifice of thousands of men, the ancients said. Behind her, Elizabeth, curled up like a cat in her bed, shivered twice at the cold wind. 3 months into her pregnancy, her belly was already slightly swollen. The life-loving young woman would sleep on her side, her arms folded over her belly, fearing any movement would awaken the unborn child. "Hubby," she whispered in her sleep. Though her eyes remained closed, her snow-white hand reached out to Loki. Loki gently grasped it and sat down beside her. "I dreamed my son grew up, a hero who saves the world." From the moment she felt the first movement, the young woman was certain she was carrying a boy. "My dear, was the journey smooth?" "Very smooth, my lady." Elizabeth's eyes remained closed, a peaceful smile playing on her lips, as if she were content with everything around her. Under Loki's special care, no one had revealed the massacre in Yun province to her. "My mother came a few days ago. This is the first time I've seen her in a whole winter. My mother summoned the red-robed monks to pray for me, and they gave me a bee to eat. I've been feeling very sleepy lately, but our child is getting healthier. I can feel his limbs are particularly strong." Elizabeth leaned forward softly, extending her snow-white arms to rest against him. "After so many years of fighting, we can finally rest for a while. Promise me you won't leave again, okay?" Elizabeth muttered these words drowsily, her long eyelashes fluttering, but she never opened her eyes. Loki gently kissed his wife's arm and adjusted her into a more comfortable sleeping position. Gently pinching his brow, he made a decision in his heart. "I might have to go to Paris in a few days, nothing particularly important, just to discuss the next business. I'll be back in a few days. Do you need anything?" At this point, Elizabeth finally opened her eyes from her bed. She spread her arms and slid onto Loki's back like a docile cat. "I need a necklace, handmade by the bone spirit craftsman, Mr. Simidus." Hearing this, Loki couldn't help but laugh. They say women are very sensitive. Elizabeth must have secretly discovered that there seemed to be something a little unusual between her and Merindon. After the war, the whole city was teleporting to the story of Geralt breaking out with a necklace, looking for Merindon to bring reinforcements. The girl naturally remembered it. "Okay, anything else?" "Nothing else, just come back soon." With that, the pregnant girl could no longer control her deep sleepiness and fell asleep, breathing evenly. Loki stroked her hair and reached out to touch her belly. This war really couldn't be fought anymore. Elizabeth's ability to genuinely accept a foreigner within 5 months was directly linked to the proper care provided to all Mercian refugees and orphans. If he had resorted to aggressive warfare, let alone defeating the powerful French duchy, he would have faced enormous challenges, including the people of Normandy, the English farmhands who had just had a few days' worth of food, and Elizabeth, who had learned the truth. Turning to his young wife, he reached out and gently pulled the goose-down quilt over her. After their marriage, he discovered that Elizabeth herself harbored numerous mysteries. The greatest mystery lay with her mother. Through conversations with his father-in-law, Ulysses Elam, the old man only hinted that this woman had emerged from the sea alone approximately 30 years ago. After entering the kingdom of Mercia, she performed various miracles, successfully becoming the Holy Maiden of Mercia. However, the efficacy of this holy maiden who blessed a kingdom was inconsistent, depending entirely on her whims. The invasion of Blood Pigeon Town 2 years ago and the swarm of saber-toothed mercenaries last spring nearly reduced the kingdom of Mercia to a scorched earth. Dialina sat quietly in the Church of Oxford, never seen again. However, 5 years ago, when Ifidus Bloodstain led his Crimson Apostles across the border and secretly entered Mercian territory, Dialina performed a miracle, illuminating half of the night sky. Ifidus immediately fled, never speaking of the incident again. Ulysses often expressed fear at the mention of her name. She was extremely secretive, and this mysterious mother-in-law didn't even attend their wedding. Since their wedding, Loki had never even seen her. Considering Elizabeth's ability to perform miraculous spells at will, Loki reached out and gently stroked his wife's belly. Was the child she carried truly a human? Chapter 387, in Paris. At the same time, in the Duchy of France, in the imperial city of Paris, Archbishop Francis opened his heavy eyelids. With a swift effort, he lifted the long, pink leg that rested on him. Stepping down from the bed, he hummed a little tune as he donned his embroidered robe, not forgetting to gently pat the girl's soft cheek. "I never thought I'd ever sleep with a French diva. The status of a royal envoy is truly a powerful drug for a young woman in love. No wonder so many people desperately strive to reach the summit. Standing at the summit, the view is truly breathtaking. Praise Loki. Praise the Holy Lord." The delicate silk robe clung to his skin, smooth as flowing water. Barefoot, Archbishop Francis grabbed a cold croissant, skewered it with tongs, and held it close to the glow of the hearth. The rich aroma of butter wafted in the air, and the old archbishop, not caring about the heat, tore it open. When the fine, golden gauze-like fabric appeared, he sighed again. When it comes to eating, these Frenchmen really know how to eat. They can actually make a simple loaf of bread look like a work of art, layer upon layer, as delicate as a honeycomb. What a remarkable craftsmanship. Oh, right, why should I eat what's left over from today's lunch? Could it be a bad habit I picked up from living with those poor Vikings for so long? No way. If that canary on the bed sees this, how will I survive in Paris? She'll think I'm a vulgar nouveau riche. The old priest immediately put down his half-eaten bread. He grabbed the butler's bell on the table and rang it twice. A pleasant, crisp ring rang out, and 2 breaths later, there were 3 measured knocks on the bedroom door. Francis called out, "Come in." The French butler, dressed in a smart black robe, appeared behind him. "Send the maids in and clear the table of food. Oh, and send someone to the Golden Lily Cafe on the corner and get me some fresh croissants. I want the ones with caramel and chocolate ganache. Get me some lemon cakes with custard pudding, too. Don't forget 2 cups of coffee." Sleeping with a woman is such a chore. After mumbling all his demands, Francis was surprised to find the old butler hadn't left yet. "Master," from the French Merchants Association. Before the butler could finish his words, he was ruthlessly interrupted by Abbot Francis. "No, damn it, I told you I won't see anyone. There are only 2 whale oil sellers in the city, and the Coldstone family owns 80%. I'll have to hold out for another 2 months to get a reasonable price." The old butler waved his hand and turned to walk into the house. "It would have been fine if I hadn't come, but now that I'm here, I realize these bastards have been taking advantage of us for years. They've ripped hundreds of thousands of gold coins out of the Vikings' pockets with crappy food and cheap weapons. My point is to tell them that from the moment Master Francis enters this city, I'll be in charge of Viking whale oil. If you're really pushing me, I'll just send the fleet to Constantinople. After all, it's just 1 trip a year, so a month's journey isn't a big deal. The Consul General of the Normandy region has been open for 5 months, and most of the meetings Francis has received have been with the owners of soap factories, candle factories, oil paint factories, cosmetics workshops, and sex toy shops. Everyone wants to get as much whale oil as possible. At the same time, they hope to bribe the old patriarch to lower the price internally. As shrewd as Francis is, he wouldn't consider such a suggestion from these vampires right now, so he's been shutting down for 4 months. It's like cooking a stew. Whale oil is an essential blending agent for soaps, pigments, and women's cosmetics. This precious resource is always in demand. With this crucial resource in hand, the old abbot must keep them scratching their heads and itching for more. Only then can he maximize his profits. Haha. I'm lucky enough not to raise the price. Are you still thinking of buying at a low price? No way. With a scornful smile, the old abbot scratched his meticulously trimmed mustache. He was about to close the shop when he was surprised to see the old butler still standing there. "What's the matter?" The old butler pursed his lips and said respectfully, "Master Francis, the person visiting today is not one of those artisanal merchants. The person visiting today is Mr. Durand Salinas, the Diamond Flower, president of the French Merchants Union. Here's his business card. Paris has 7 commercial streets, and the Salinas family owns 3 of them. In other words, nearly half of the shops in the city are owned by their family." The name of Durand Salinas was known throughout Paris. All merchants in the city, whether shipping or purchasing, had to register and coordinate with the Chamber of Commerce. This not only protected the interests of foreign merchants by preventing them from purchasing counterfeit goods, but also enabled them to standardize prices, preventing vicious competition and hoarding among merchants. The Merchants' Union played an indelible role in Paris's rise to become the luxury goods capital of the Western continent. Common sense would dictate that a living Buddha of comparable stature to Edward Longlegs would never proactively visit a diplomat from a small, marginal nation like Francis. Even at the Duke's wedding, the proud French refused to send a single envoy. Now, when the president came seeking him late at night, Archbishop Francis instinctively assumed he had no good intentions. "Okay, I got it. Go ahead and greet him first, show him around and see what my Normandy region has produced. I'll wash my face and be back later." After buying this mansion, Francis's place had long been deserted. In the past, the most frequent visitors were the fallen women he employed and the small-time owners of handicraft workshops. Diamond Flower Durand was the first big fish he had personally visited since accepting the job. Father Francis found a dark blue robe and put it on. Before leaving, he took a dab of cologne on his temples and wrists. Very good, I look damn civilized now. Very pleased with his appearance, he quickly descended the stairs. He didn't notice that the soprano he had brought back from the opera had already opened her beautiful eyes. Today, I discovered that an author I really like, Xianfu Shuorui, has a new book out. We live in Nanjing. He might be one of the few remaining successful hard science fiction writers on Kidian. I thought his previous book, Titans Without Life, was quite good. On the contrary, I didn't really read the first book that won the boutique, Death on Mars. If you like science fiction, you can support it. Chapter 388, Francis the Great, 1. Born at the mansion staircase. Hello, I'm Durand Solanus of the French Chamber of Commerce. Of course, in Paris, they call me by another name. As soon as he appeared at the mansion staircase, Diamond Flower Durand, who was standing at the foot of the passage, immediately stood up and smiled at him. A seasoned businessman, he knew this Viking diplomat might not know much about etiquette. To avoid any awkwardness on either side, he opened his arms, and the two embraced gently, like old friends who hadn't seen each other for a long time. Then, guided by the butler, they walked into the side hall. Although Abbot Francis was greedy and lustful, his taste surpassed that of most Viking pirates. This was evident in the magnificent Lindisfarne Abbey he had decorated. After purchasing the mansion, he didn't strip the exterior walls and replace them with gold bricks like the other Visigothic tycoons. Instead, he preserved much of the original structure, decorating only key areas with Eastern vases and Viking wares. The front walls of the side hall were covered with furs from Scandinavia, along with sealskins, seal tusks, mammoth skulls, and more. Upon entering the room, Durand was immediately struck by a strange, northern scene. He involuntarily leaned closer to the wall to examine these rare treasures, rarely seen in the Western continent. Following him, his graceful female companion also removed her veil. Only then did the old abbot realize that she was Bulgari, the soprano lead singer of Paris's popular opera company, the Les Roses des Roses. Wow! This old woman must be nearly 60 years old. Tisk, tisk. Even the female companion he brings out is so impressive. I've been in Paris for 5 months and have bought tickets no fewer than 50 times, but never once have I been able to see the Plantagenet Theatre. Even today, I had to rely on sheer luck to get a ticket to lesser theatre. I never expected to see the famous actor in person for the first time here. The influential figures in Paris truly surpassed the imagination of a small nation. What Archbishop Francis had said was true. Just as the nobility and the common people were two distinct classes of people in the Middle Ages, so too were the Duchy of France and the 7 Kingdoms of England two distinct nations. Of the 7 Kingdoms of England, perhaps only Southampton hosted a few foreign envoys, the others were almost entirely isolated and primitive. However, in Paris, even small, unnamed nations like the region of Normandy must have at least 180, if not 200, envoys. Often, the prestige of a small nation was even less influential than that of a medium-sized chamber of commerce. Sensing the old archbishop's indifferent gaze, Bulgari removed her gloves and held out her fair, delicate hand. The archbishop cupped her hand and gently kissed it. The white palm was soft and delicate, and the fragrance of roses lingered between her fingers. The Vikings, truly are a wondrous nation. Glancing around, Durand was the first to break the ice. I've heard your warriors often live in remote, frigid wastelands, battling wolves and giant bears all day just to get enough food. No wonder the saber-toothed mercenaries are such sought-after mercenaries across the Western continent. Haha, of course. Seeing Durand plop down on the first seat, the old patriarch offered no complaints, but instead smiled and pulled a chair for his female companion. Heaven hasn't blessed us with perfect soil, but life will find its own way. If you're here today to buy furs, Mr. President, I can assure you, every fur that comes to market from my hands was personally hunted by my hunters deep in the mountains. Despite his rambling, the old patriarch knew that a visit from such a prominent figure late at night wasn't just for barrels of whale oil or a few hides. He must have something important to discuss with me, but couldn't come during the day because he wanted to avoid being seen. The old priest's first task was to find out Durand's purpose in seeking him out. God bless you, this old man must be trying to seduce me. I'd give 10 years of my life and sell my soul for a kiss of Bulgari's. Amen. Oh, 10 years is too much? Half a year, maybe. However, Durand didn't respond. He simply stared at him with his wise, deep blue eyes. After a moment, he removed an emerald ring from his left index finger. Those who knew him well knew this was his habit when he had something important to discuss. Bulgari gracefully stood up, placed her rosy lips to his ear, kissed his temple, and then stood up and left. The butler behind Father Francis also tactfully backed out, not forgetting to close the door to the side hall before leaving. When they were the only two left in the side hall, Durand took out his pipe from his bosom, and the old priest respectfully lit it for him. Mr. Francis, I think you are very different from those Vikings. You are much more civilized than them, haha. Of course, the old priest laughed heartily. To be honest, you can tell from my name. My mother named me Francis to commemorate her hometown. I was not born in Viking, but in Northumbria. Well, there's nothing much to say. The son of a blacksmith's apprentice and a pastry chef is not a background worth boasting about. In this case, Mr. Francis must have made a lot of efforts that ordinary people can hardly imagine to get to where he is today. Haha. The old priest recalled how he was alone and driving a long ship on the cold North Sea, and how he climbed into Lindisfarne Monastery alone to obtain the information that ever had been possessed by a lizard man. Hey, Mr. Dulang has achieved his current position because he surpasses me tenfold in wealth, intelligence, and effort. My abilities pale in comparison to yours. He suddenly lowered his voice and leaned his massive head closer to Dulang. Master, if there's anything I can do for you, don't hesitate to ask. Don't be shy about my small eyes, but I can still tell the difference between a big ship and a small one. He, having spent half his life as an abbot at Lindisfarne Monastery, relying on his eloquence to deceive the faithful, Francis had learned a crucial lesson: never talk too much in areas you're not adept at. Too much talk leads to mistakes. This old Frenchman had come in with a fake smile and engaged in rambling conversation. He must have something important he wanted to share. So, why don't I make my position clear and get straight to the point? If I continue this rambling, I might just reveal a flaw. Chapter 389, Francis, 2. Diamond Flower Durand was able to ascend to the position of president of the Chamber of Commerce. He had seen countless people throughout his life. Before setting off for Francis's residence, he had already arranged for someone to purchase all the intelligence he could from a Zoroastrian intelligence dealer. This old abbot was the epitome of a shameless scoundrel. This began with his origins. His mother was a pastry chef in a Northumbrian nobleman's mansion. This aristocrat had no interest in martial arts, was aloof from socializing, and had little regard for religious beliefs, focusing solely on food. He spent a fortune to purchase a pastry chef from the Duchy of France, whose sole job was to satisfy his appetite. This person was the abbot's mother. Over time, a woman inevitably becomes lonely. This was then noticed by a blacksmith's apprentice in the aristocratic castle. He used his eloquence and sweet talk to win over the skilled but somewhat reserved French chef. The two began to engage in secret conversations in the dead of night. Finally, one day, the Frenchwoman became pregnant. In the dark Middle Ages, without machinery, making bread and cakes was arduous manual labor. Unable to handle the arduous labor, the Frenchwoman was immediately expelled from the castle by the Duke. Desperate, the couple used their remaining silver to buy a small tavern on Northumbria's King's Road to make ends meet. This was the origin of Dean Francis. The old Dean grew up in a bustling tavern. His hard-working mother toiled day and night in the kitchen, while his unlearned father, who had long since abandoned his blacksmithing skills, spent his days at the bar, joking with passing merchants and, thanks to his eloquence, even cultivated a steady stream of repeat customers. As the saying goes, a red rose in the company of a red rose, and a black rose in the company of a black rose. The old Dean inherited his mother's beauty and his father's eloquence. Thanks to this gift of gab, he infiltrated the church, rising from a lowly priest to the position of dean. His strengths were inherited from his parents, but so were his weaknesses. This was a man who didn't abide by conventional rules, nor did he care about loyalty. When the Vikings sacked Lindisfarne Abbey, he betrayed the royal city without a second thought to save his own life. When he fell into Viking hands, he instantly abandoned his faith and led the Vikings back to England. Durand had seen many such people in his lifetime. They were not difficult to control. People in the East Continent often say, "The phoenix roosts in the sycamore tree." It took our sycamore tree to track Mr. Francis, the golden phoenix, Mr. Durand's double entendre, first demonstrating Francis' strength, and secondly, offering a little praise to Archbishop Francis himself. The old archbishop had trouble understanding his English, which was thickly accented with French, but that didn't stop him from listening intently. If possible, I need you to do two things for me. 1. Find a way to help us lure Mr. Loki Sterager to Paris. I'm sure the Lord Archbishop has also heard the recent news that White Eagle André Jarvin died in Yun province. To uphold the honor of the Plantagenet family, no one can get away with killing a French citizen. We ask the Duke to come here for trial simply to get him to reveal the true culprit behind the crime. We have no intention of threatening his life. I want to make this clear to you, Mr. Francis. You've seen that there are at least 800 envoys from small countries in Paris. No one in a mustard seed-sized territory like the Normandy region will take the initiative to make things difficult for you. The old archbishop's eyes moved flexibly and he nodded secretly. Well, it sounds like a reasonable deal, but his eyes first swept over the gleaming gem rings on Durand's fingers, then passed over the jade pendant around his waist. Endu is a toy of the people in Donglu. As a country bumpkin, I have no idea which one is valuable. Everyone in the city is saying that old man Dulang likes to take off the emerald ring before negotiations. This toy should be quite valuable. With a cold glint in his eyes, the old priest continued, it's just that our Duke is a man who cherishes his life. Well, you don't know how cowardly he is. Before going to bed every day, he must chew 2 ginseng roots raw, for fear of dying in bed. When he goes to the battlefield, he always pretends to carry a big axe, and he wishes to hide 800 miles away from the front line. But how did I hear? Dulang frowned. Ah! My respected Mr. Durand, the old patriarch waved his hand, interrupting him without hesitation. Personality. Do you understand personality? We are all Odin's people after all. If we spread the rumor that the Duke, who traditionally leads the army, is a coward who values his life, it would be so shameful. Don't just listen to the fake news spread by those cockroaches of the Zoroastrianism. Only my old eyes can see the events happening in Normandy. It's difficult to trick such a coward into coming to Paris with just my words. The old patriarch extended a short, thick finger. But, with your token, it's different. Everyone in the Western continent knows you have an emerald ring. Why don't you lend it to me first? Wait. This diamond doesn't seem small either. An emerald ring alone might not be enough to explain the problem, so why not lend me this diamond ring as well? With these 2 tokens, I can tell you it's the diamond flower, Mr. Durand personally promised. That way, my chances of success will be much higher. Sensing Durand's suspicious look, the old abbot immediately waved his arms. Hey! Why are you looking at me like that? I'm a man of integrity, honesty, always keeping my word. Let's put it this way. I still have to make a living in Paris. Everyone knows that you, Mr. Durand, are so powerful in this city. How could I dare to buy your treasure? I'd put it up for sale. But no one would buy it when they saw the Durand crest, isn't that right? Chapter 390, Francis the Great, 3. Dulang narrowed his eyes, his brow furrowed into a deep frown. Every word Father Francis uttered seemed perfectly reasonable, yet when taken together, it gave off a distinctly commonplace feeling of deception. The last sentence, however, was somewhat true. If this blind man were to succeed in his deception, no pawnshop in the 1,200 cities of the Western continent would dare accept his iconic property. 80% of the Solanus family's fortune had been built with the support of the Illuminati, and now completing the Illuminati's mission was paramount. Nodding silently, Dulang removed the diamond ring from his finger and handed it to Francis, along with the emerald ring on the round table. The old father smiled as he took the 2 heavy rings into his arms, his eyes almost curved into crescents. I will do my utmost to accomplish my mission. Within 10 days at the latest, I will ensure that my Duke appears in Paris. Didn't we say there was a second request? What's the second request, brother? Durand stared at Francis with piercing eyes for a full minute. During this time, he quickly synthesized all the information he knew. My judgment was correct. This old man is a lecherous, greedy, and profit-driven villain. With 2 light coughs, Durand revealed his other purpose. It's said that you and Duke Loki have a very good relationship. When you divided the fiefdoms, the others could only passively accept, but only you, Mr. Francis, could actively choose the appropriate position. You hold a high position in the Duke's heart. Unsurprisingly, this was another piece of information passed to Durand by those ubiquitous Zoroastrian intelligence dealers. The old patriarch gave an awkward laugh and didn't directly answer. He was the culprit for betraying the entire English people and causing the suffering of the 7 kingdoms. This wasn't a feat worth boasting about. And the old patriarch knew it all too well. If you can, I need a small favor from you. This has nothing to do with the state, it's a personal invitation. If you can accomplish this, the Solinus family will forever consider you a friend. I can even bring you to the imperial palace to meet the true leaders of the western continent. The old patriarch's eyes, which had been moving around for a moment, paused. He could hardly believe what he was hearing. What is the purpose of life? 100 people will give 100 answers. Although the first answer that comes to mind may vary, there's one thing that everyone has subconsciously pursued since the beginning of human society. It's called changing one's class. In slave society, slaves aspire to become slave owners. Slave owners aspire to obtain official positions. Small officials aspire to become high-ranking officials, and high-ranking officials aspire to become emperors. Throughout every dynasty in human civilization, 99% of people strive to achieve this goal. Yet, only a few succeed. The greatest obstacle lies in finding the right guide. The nearly closed circles between different levels of society made the channels for upward and downward mobility extremely narrow. In the eyes of ordinary Parisians, the lavishly dressed and commanding owners of the artisan workshops were already the upper class. Ordinary workers would struggle their entire lives to achieve their wealth. However, upon entering the residence of Archbishop Francis, these workshop owners immediately transformed into unyielding bastards. Their raw materials were controlled by the Archbishop, who was the father of them all. Francis had already completed the transformation from commoner to official. If he wanted to ascend to the next level, to the true center of power in the Western continent, it would be extremely difficult. Not to mention him, even Duke Loki was completely outside their circle. Without someone to bring him in, he would remain on the outside for the rest of his life. The reason was easy to understand: leaders also carry risks. It was like forcing an extra chair into a table that originally seated 10 while everyone still had enough to eat. An extra person wasn't always a comfort. If this person brings disaster again, the guide will immediately become a target of public criticism. The Waldorf family in Constantinople is a prime example of this. They brought the Viking princess into the city's upper class and successfully helped her obtain the resources she needed. However, with the invasion of Bakumbush, all the Romans who followed her to the Dragon's Breath Plateau to prospect for gold were wiped out. Since Marindane refused to return to Constantinople, the Romans naturally blamed the Waldorf family. If Emma hadn't become the Royal Academy's chief explorer in recent years, and if Oldgar hadn't controlled this route to the New World, the Waldorf family's social reputation would be in jeopardy. No matter how you consider it, the Solinus family has no need to elevate itself socially. First, today was the first time the two had met. Before today, Diamond Flower Durand, like Longlegs Edward, had been a legendary figure to the old patriarch. They were no closer to the patriarch than the distance between the earth and the moon. Secondly, Francis was born a commoner. He lacked the backing of a powerful family. This meant that bringing him into the fold was like bringing in a blood-sucking leech. He would bring no benefit to the Plantagenets, only seek to drain their resources. Finally, the old patriarch was self-aware. He knew his reputation in the Western continent. To describe his actions as duplicitous was a compliment. Most righteous knights would disdain to even converse with someone who had betrayed the holy light and lacked any sense of honor. Even seeing him on the street would be met with disdain and ridicule. In stark contrast, the Solons family, to which Diamond Flower Durand belonged, was a family that could rule half of Paris. This wasn't achieved by the Illuminati alone. Their family motto was Solons, keep your word. These 8 short words were like a business tag affixed to the backs of all members of the family. Durand demanded unconditional obedience from everyone from the royal dignitaries to the servants in the palace. The Solinus family could be held responsible for any boasts they made. They could lose money, businesses, even the lives of their own people. But they must not lose their reputation. The name Solinus family was built through over a dozen generations of this abbreviated slogan. Centuries later, it was practically universally known throughout the Western continent. Because they always kept their word. Since this old man has said he'll introduce me to the king, it seems he's serious. Then the question arises, what exactly is he asking for? What is it that only I can do, and he can't, that would make this old man willing to offer such a price? The old patriarch continued to listen. Dulang said in a deep voice, I need you to locate the Asgard portal. With these words, the old patriarch felt as if the clouds had cleared, and everything before him suddenly became clear. Dulang was surprisingly the same master he had seen through the crack in the wall. both affiliated with a mysterious Illuminati. Before I left Rainy Highlands, Duke Loki repeatedly stressed that I must be careful of the Illuminati spies in Paris. I didn't expect that this group of people would reappear after 5 months, and any of them was at the level of Chamber of Commerce president. It seems that what Duke Loki said was right. This group of secret societies hidden in the dark side of human civilization does have the ability to see through everything. Tisk tisk, the old priest sucked his teeth and looked embarrassed. This is a difficult matter, very difficult. Duke Loki is a benefactor in my life. Everything I have today was selflessly given to me by His Excellency the Duke. As for the Asgard portal, it is the lifeblood of all Vikings. If I leak this information, I'm afraid all the Vikings in the entire Western continent will regard me as their enemy. It's good to be able to enter the upper class, but I also have to live to enjoy it, don't you think? After a long silence, the old priest continued, but then again, as the wise saying of Lord Edward Plantagenet goes, everyone has a price tag. If you want me to sell my soul, that's not impossible. You have to pay more. Chapter 391, Francis the Great, 4. What transpired in the side room for the next hour remained unknown. Butler France only saw Monsieur Durand emerge from the side room, his face sullen. His expression sullen. He didn't even bother to greet his female companion, who was enjoying tea in the main hall, as he walked straight out of Abbot Francis's residence. A full quarter of an hour later, Abbot Francis emerged from the side room, smiling. The 5 rings and an exquisite obsidian bracelet that had originally been on Durand's hand had been safely transferred to Abbot Francis's stubby wrist. He also held a Plantagenet banknote for 100,000 imperial silver dollars. The reason why it took so long was because the old priest tearfully told Mr. Dulang how many relatives he had. I have 3 wives in Scandinavia and 2 more in the Rainy Highlands. You ask me to do this kind of betrayal. I will definitely succeed. They will definitely put the blame on me after they lost the portal. Poor my newlywed wife, she is only 16 years old, and I have several unborn children. In this dark and chaotic world, they have to grow up in an environment where they have lost their father. Well, it's not too much for me to ask for some child support. 1, 2, 3, you still have 3 rings. Oh? What is that? A bracelet? Give them all to me. Just consider it a meeting gift from my children. It will cost at least 10,000 gold coins to smuggle 5 wives and family members to France. Your family is big and powerful, so you don't need this little money. Let's round it up and give me 100,000 gold coins. Dulang had researched his background and knew he might be a bit shameless. But he hadn't expected this former holy archbishop to be so shameless. In the civilized and prosperous France, initiating a discussion about money was considered extremely vulgar and lowbrow. No one would, like a clueless 3-year-old, ask for someone's jewelry. The old archbishop, however, was sharp-tongued and unfazed. Interacting with him felt like stumbling into a slum filled with black slaves from the northern continent. He picked at Dulang's feet while robbing him from head to toe. Dulang was even a little afraid to continue talking to him, as the old man might even strip him of his coat. However, considering this was a task assigned by the patriarch and the importance of the Asgard portal, Loki seemed to have only one open position, so Dulang had no choice but to comply with his requests. Indeed, as Archbishop Francis had imagined, the little he had plundered was nothing to the wealthy house of Solanus. Diamond Flower's reputation wasn't simply a fleeting achievement. If he desired, Durand could even bring him a card of high-quality gemstone rings of various shapes tomorrow morning, enough for him to wear in a variety of styles for a year. For such a small price to fulfill the master's request, Durand had no complaints. Meanwhile, Father Francis boasted, but he harbored no desire to collaborate with these old lizards. As one of the few mortals on this planet to witness the bloody second company of lizardmen, who killed and wore human skin, the old father still recalled the horrific scene in the deserted night. The Illuminati's hidden rulers weren't even human, but a group of ancient lizards who had survived from ancient times. Everyone who attended Loki's wedding had seen their true form. However, it was undeniable that the guests were primarily the rulers of the British Isles. The revelation of the lizardmen's existence had a far smaller impact than initially imagined. This incident was so fantastical that even Zoroastrian intelligence dealers struggled to fetch a high price. If one hadn't witnessed it with their own eyes, no one would have believed that another group of old lizards, clad in human skin, could infiltrate human society. Returning to his bedroom, it was already late at night. The old patriarch glanced at the actress, still slumbering in her bed, and asked the butler for stationery, a quill, and ink. Once everything was ready, he scribbled rapidly on the paper, biting into a crispy caramel croissant. Dear Duke, after consulting with Mr. Durand Salons, the diamond flower of the French Merchants Union, the Salons family is willing to guarantee you a fair, open, and impartial trial. Salons, keep your word is the family motto known throughout Paris. I have accepted the Salons family's token of trust, trusting that they will not risk their reputation over such a trivial matter. With the family's guarantee, your trip to Paris should be a worry-free one. We can't afford another war. He was writing furiously when a warm body suddenly pressed against his back. Turning back, he saw Canary, who had been lying in bed. Her eyes were full of love as she gazed at him, her long, graceful legs, like a dancer, wrapped around his waist from his back. My dear, you're still busy so late. After dark, there are visitors and letters. The lives of important people are really full of tension. The old pastor winked and frowned. Hey, dear, go down first. I've got a big order. I need to finish the work I'm doing last night. It's urgent, haha. Urgent. The girl's expression changed instantly. She opened her rosy lips and bit his shoulder hard. Don't think I'm illiterate like you white-haired savages. Our dance troupe has to memorize lines in various languages every day, and the words Your Excellency the Duke are the only ones I'm most familiar with. I'm so tired of being a maid on camera, dressed in rags. I really hope I can play the role of a duchess and enjoy a full performance. The old pastor blinked, smiled, and kissed the girl before him. Since returning to his room, he had seen the steadily rising back, and suddenly understood many things. Why were there tickets available at the opera house, which was always so hard to get? Why were these famous actors who had always disdained him so actively approaching him today, and even so easily seduced? Why was this girl sleeping like a dead pig in a stranger's room? It wasn't until he saw Diamond Flower Durand's late-night visit and his unconditional agreement to all her unreasonable requests that the old pastor knew this was no accident. So, why not play the trick? Sure enough, halfway through the letter, the sleeping girl suddenly woke up. There is no doubt that this is also a spy sent by the Illuminati to inspect themselves. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 392 The Illuminati Gathers. Did you see clearly, Your Honor? I saw it clearly enough. He was indeed writing a secret letter urging Duke Loki to come to trial. He also fully explained what Lord Durand was willing to guarantee. Very good, then, leave. In Paris, every inch of land is worth a fortune. However, as everyone knows, the truly powerful don't crowd the city like commoners. The overcrowded streets can't accommodate their exotic animals. The truly powerful buy land outside the castle and build their own castles. At that moment, in the manner study of Sir Ethan von Cloon, the Grand Justice of Paris, 5 figures, standing and sitting, gradually emerged against a pale sky. At the head of the table was a slender French gentleman, 2 meters tall. He wore a respectable black robe embroidered with gold thread and sat in a comfortable oak chair, petting a docile white cat in his arms. A closer look revealed that this was no ordinary cat, but an albino cheetah from the New World. Jungle cheetahs are typically pitch black, with white ones being extremely rare. In all of Paris, only Lord Crown owns one. He is the Grand Inquisitor of the French Inquisition. He is truly second to none, above 10,000. After dismissing the actress who came to report, Ethan released his hands, letting his pet run to a corner of the house to play with a ball of yarn. He turned to look at Diamond Flower Durand. Do you think this Duke Loki has truly returned? Durand smiled faintly. Your Honor, I don't think he has a choice. I've already inquired clearly. He has no troops at his disposal. He was able to hold on to the 2 provinces thanks to the hostages he currently controls. If it weren't for the suzerain's mishap in capturing Alfred, Normandy would probably be in chaos by now. Ethan disliked the word accident. As a judge, he desired everything around him to be perfectly organized, smooth, and orderly. Any accident would disrupt his plans and logic, greatly hindering his sole authority to rule. By the way, where has the Lord been these past few days? If the real Lord really does show up, wouldn't he personally interrogate this poor Duke Loki? Ethan had spent his life judging heretics. When he ascended to the Inquisition with the help of the Illuminati, no heretic had ever emerged alive. In his eyes, Loki was already a dead man. The moment he entered his courtroom, he would surely perish. If he doesn't come, England will face an endless economic blockade. Within a month, his own people will overthrow him from the throne. Ethan was convinced of Durand's argument. No one understood the human heart better than he, the Lord Chancellor. Once someone had tasted the conveniences of a prosperous life, no one would ever want to return to the barren, cold Scandinavia. What I don't understand is, if this man is as dangerous as the legends say, wouldn't it be easier to just kill him? Ethan asked, puzzled. Before Durand could reply, a hoarse voice suddenly boomed from the corner. The Lord's whereabouts are beyond our reach. We must simply faithfully carry out his mission. The voice came from a slender man, his back against the wall, cloaked in shadow. In the darkness, only the flicker of a flame flickered from his pipe. Lord Lan, what are your thoughts? The East Continent native in the shadows was named Lan Bixu, a deserted disciple of the Yushin sword sect of the Tang Kingdom 30 years ago. Rumor has it that he was caught practicing forbidden magic by his fellow disciples. Lan Bixu, with his sword, slaughtered 3 of them, then fled the Yushin sword sect in the chaos, fleeing far away. At the time, the Eastern Tang dynasty was still recovering from the aftermath of the Lushan rebellion. The country, in need of reconstruction, was overwhelmed with important matters and had no resources to pursue a traitor from a second-rate sword sect. In the eyes of the East Continent natives, the furthest point from the East Continent was the West Continent, across the East-West Continental Bridge. Lan Bixu drifted to the Duchy of France, hiding for decades. Only after the Jade Mountain sword sect vanished and no one sought revenge on him did he emerge from the wilderness and return to human society. As the top warriors in the land of Kyushu, finding a job was easy for a Tang dynasty swordsman. Lan Bixu easily joined the French border guard. A month later, his first superior tragically died at home, bitten in the throat by a venomous green snake. Lan Bixu was promoted to captain of the 10th rank. Another fortnight later, his second superior accidentally fell off a cliff while on duty. Lan Bixu was promoted to centurion. 10 days later, his third superior suddenly divorced, stating that he was too old and frail to continue the guard duties. Lan Bixu was promoted to captain of the 1000th rank. Just a year later, he made his way from the provinces to Paris, quickly rising to captain of the 10,000-man Golden Scale Guard, becoming the most powerful general in the imperial city. He certainly performed his duties well. After taking office, Paris experienced no major disturbances. The Plantagenet family bestowed upon him numerous gifts annually, and even the city's merchants would spontaneously fly the guards' banners in celebration of Lord Lan's birthday. Others wondered why, but Lan Bixu knew full well. His smooth journey was thanks to the work of the master. All we need to do is trust the master. Every time the master returns, he brings us profit and glory. This time, though there are some minor incidents, we must first unite as one. Exhaling a long puff of smoke, Lan Bixu slowly emerged from the shadows. He wore a long, dark, blue-gray robe, and despite being over 70, he still looked youthful. Rumors abounded in Paris that the unholy methods he practiced could preserve his youth. However, Mr. Lan's ruthless methods were well known, and even members of the Illuminati dared not interrogate him in person. Since you think that Duke Loki will definitely come back, then I will be prepared for him to enter the city. The Patriarch has ordered him to enter the Inquisition for trial. My only task is to ensure that he enters the Inquisition intact and that no other chaos occurs during the trial. As for you, don't think too much. I hope you remember that this is the first S-level prisoner in my Western continent in the past 30 years. In terms of danger level, he is even more dangerous than the Whip of God 500 years ago. Sincere cooperation is the only way out. Illuminati, Eternal Light. Chapter 393 The Duchy of France and the Carolingian Renaissance. 10 days later. Loki paused involuntarily as he gazed at the endless emerald green fields and the seemingly endless white walls at their end. After 22 years of travel, Paris was the first great royal city he had ever seen. This majestic city radiated from its center, with 5 satellite cities surrounding it. What lay before him was only the first fortress, the Castle of Versailles. This fortress alone rivaled the grandeur of Southampton, the royal city of Wessex. In the 9th century AD, the world-famous Palace of Versailles would not appear until 700 years later. At that time, the Castle of Versailles was merely a prestigious tourist attraction within the Duchy of France. This area, with its vast forests and marshes, was one of the 3 breeding grounds for wild unicorns in France. The Plantagenet family had designated 500 hectares of forest and marshland as a conservation area and had organized a forest guard of nearly 10,000 men to patrol it day and night to keep out poachers. Versailles Castle was the garrison of this troop. It's undeniable that even this humble satellite town was meticulously designed by French architects. Amidst the vast expanse of fields, a snow-white city wall loomed at its edge. Behind the wall, all the buildings were clad in white brick and tile, creating a stunning backdrop against the mist-shrouded emerald peaks of Versailles Castle, a scene resembling a paradise on earth. Everyone says France is a wonderful place, but only when you see it with your own eyes can you truly believe it's a paradise. Wenzhofu marveled as he rode his majestic horse, gazing at the cornfields, each nearly a meter tall. Thousands of years ago, flying Kagan cultivators from the pre-Qin period discovered the New World while purging the outer gods. They brought back seeds of this highly adaptable dryland crop, the yellow fruit. Corn, a highly adaptable dryland crop, quickly gained popularity. A century later, along with the Silk Road, it spread like wildfire across the globe. The corn grown in the Duchy of France, like the robust crops influenced by the Yuan sword, surprisingly yields 2 cobs per stalk. However, the Zhuanite sword's reach was ultimately limited. Now within France, the endless cornfields stretching across the mountains ruthlessly proclaimed the nation's might. Unlike Wenzhoff, who spent most of his life counting the days, Alfred, on Loki's other side, was unfazed. Born in the royal palace of Southampton, Alfred had been sent to Constantinople at great expense by Egbert for as long as he could remember. He had seen too much of the bustling city, but it was the Viking culture of constant slaughter that captivated him. Loki only brought Wenzhoff and Alfred with him on this journey. Dirwal, Satyr, and other longtime companions requested to join the expedition, but Loki refused them all. First and foremost, this journey was destined to be an extremely perilous one. The Vikings, clinging to their new lives with their axes, hadn't even had a chance to enjoy their new lives for a few days before they had no need to enter this hostile foreign land. The only reason he chose to bring Alfred along was that, like himself, he was a target of the Illuminati. Secondly, allowing this lawless, ruthless band of thugs to enter France was not a wise decision. He was already caught up in a conspiracy, there was no need to add to his troubles. The Duchy of France perfectly exemplifies the saying. A well-stocked granary teaches etiquette. Thousands of years ago, when ancient Rome conquered Carthage and began expanding along the Mediterranean coastline, they discovered that the Gauls living there were significantly taller than other barbarians. Furthermore, Gallic villages often had large populations and formidable fighting power. The only reason Gaul was unable to defeat Rome was that this primitive city-state lacked a reliable deity. In contrast, the 12 pantheons of Zeus provided the Roman Republic with an abundance of chosen men, enabling Caesar to conquer Gaul in 49 BC. Upon conquering this territory, Rome brought advanced culture and technology. With systematic cultivation, the land's value was rapidly realized. Roman rule over France lasted nearly 500 years. In 476 AD, the Western Roman Empire collapsed, and the Roman citizens living there declared independence. They called themselves the Franks and established the first independent dynasty in this land, the Merovingian Empire. In 508 AD, the capital was moved to Paris and the name was changed to the Duchy of France. The Duchy of France accomplished several feats during the Dark Ages. First, in 632 AD, the French people, using dragons and Pegasus, successfully resisted the Arab Empire's newly developed Fire Knights and effectively stopped the Arab Empire's expansion into the western continent. From then on, the Arab Empire's territory stopped at the puppet state of the Ramses in the north, and it never advanced further. Second, in 651 AD, the Carolingian Empire was established. The extremely wealthy French people began the first Renaissance of the Dark Ages, known as the Carolingian Renaissance. During the Dark Ages, when most people struggled to afford daily meals, carriages, and housing, Charlemagne, ruler of the Carolingian dynasty, successfully ensured that every French household had enough food and water. There were horses in the stables, and cows in the cowshed. Looking at the silver coins piled nearly to the ceiling in the treasury, some of which had oxidized and turned black, a new dream dawned on him. He wanted every French citizen to learn to read. The first step was to reform the script. Spending a fortune, Charlemagne and his colleagues, along with nearly half the scholars of the Western continent, spent years researching and transforming the cumbersome Latin script into a more accessible script. capitalizing the first letter of a sentence and ending it with a punctuation mark. This unprecedented achievement stemmed from the Carolingian Renaissance. Having established a more standardized and simple language, the next step was to promote it nationwide. Charlemagne's thoughts turned to the now national Holy Church. However, religion and state were always separate concepts. As a king, he could command his subjects without difficulty, but issuing orders to the monks required more effort. Charlemagne employed a circuitous tactic. He first collected scattered legends about the holy bishops from around the world and combined them with the various biblical stories of local churches. After careful compilation by his scholars, he created a new Bible in French. This Bible represents a unified and comprehensive account of the history of the holy bishops. It details the events from the Exodus in 1350 BC, to the Persian conquest of Babylon in 537 BC, and the return of the Jews to their homeland. To the Hebrew Bible compiled by Jews in ancient Greece in 300 BC, and to the difficult development of the holy bishops in the 12 temples of Zeus during the Roman period. Upon its publication, this Bible, known as the Old Testament, was immediately treasured by the holy bishops. Charlemagne promoted this new language, and the monks naturally adopted the new language, French. This provided fertile ground for the monks to establish church schools. Chapter 394, Road into the City. Charlemagne's true ambition was to establish church schools throughout the Western continent. Abundant harvests from the land and the additional wealth generated by commerce led to a rapid increase in the French population. 4 or 5 children per household was the norm. Through careful observation of the people, he realized that if the French could be freed from the burden of caring for young children, the kingdom's revenue would increase significantly. More citizens would be able to drive carriages and sail ships to trade, or attend academies and train as scholars or soldiers. Compared to cultivating the land, developing trade within the Mediterranean commerce zone offered far greater profits. The holy churches, spread across the land to meet the need for evangelism, found their place. After using the Bible to popularize French, Charlemagne generously allocated funds to establish a church school in every holy church. He established a law requiring all churches that received payment to teach their members' children the 7 arts: grammar, rhetoric, logic, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. This created a win-win situation for both sides. The convenience provided by church schools attracted more people to attend, providing new converts for the bishops. Meanwhile, Charlemagne accomplished the goal of education from a young age, spreading civilization, and freeing up adult labor. Furthermore, during the 50 years of the Carolingian Empire, France saw significant progress in architecture, music, and painting. Recognizing the benefits offered by the Catholic Church, Charlemagne immediately provided strong support. Architecture began with the construction of churches. Music also pioneered innovations in the Gospels and papal canons. As for painting, to make this most affordable art form accessible to the general public, Charlemagne pioneered the practice of illustrating books, a task previously considered extremely tedious and time-consuming. Over the years, book production became increasingly sophisticated. Manuscripts bound in animal skins and featuring color illustrations were even considered heirlooms and passed down from generation to generation by many residents. Pope Gregory II considered Charlemagne's arrival a blessing from Christ. He was sent to this world by Christ at the right time, in the right place, in the right country, and to the right family one. The early Carolingian reign had accumulated a substantial wealth for Charlemagne, so that when he ascended the throne, he faced a treasury overflowing with silver too. The promotion of culture is never achieved overnight. It requires a dynasty's persistent promotion and decades of consistent investment. Byzantium, constantly at war with the Arab Empire, simply could not afford such an expenditure. Only France, situated in the rear and blessed with fertile land, could sustain it. 3. Charlemagne disliked war, women, power, exotic animals, or leisurely wanderings. Only someone with such an indifferent nature would choose to invest in culture, a vain industry that would yield no results for decades. By chance, the Carolingian Renaissance succeeded. The Dark Middle Ages, shrouded in blood, darkness, and slaughter, saw the first ray of light. This light arrived 100 years ago with the establishment of the Holy Church and the Duchy of France. Following the caravan into Versailles, the exquisite redstone streets were immaculately clean. The pristine white walls bear not a single stain. Loki had brought only 30 guards with him on this trip, so his presence amidst the caravan was unobtrusive. Remarkably, upon crossing the English Channel and stepping onto French soil, No guards or knights escorted him into the city. The proud French people had thwarted the Arab invasion 150 years prior. Compared to the flaming steeds charging towards them like a landslide or tsunami, the Duke of a small, remote kingdom like Loki was hardly worth the effort. If he failed to arrive within the stipulated time frame, the blockade of England would immediately commence. Even if the 7 rulers united to bring Loki to justice, the Plantagenets could exploit the situation and impose permanent trade tariffs, as they had done 12 years earlier. Today was the last day of the agreed-upon 10-day deadline. However, Loki showed no intention of keeping his appointment. After entering the city, seeing that it was getting late, he was just about to consider resting at the castle of Versailles when he saw Patriarch Francis standing on the street corner. "Oh my God, Holy Lord, Almighty Virgin Mary! Why are you here after all? I repeatedly warned you not to set foot on French soil. To ensure you didn't come, I even sent a raven to—" "Oh, by the Lord, Master Wenzoff, you're here too, that's good. We'll have company on our journey to the underworld." Facing the sweaty, chattering old patriarch, Loki dismounted and gave him a big hug. "Boss, don't you think we should just return to Scandinavia and continue living there? Crossing the seas to attack England might be fun, but the civilized world is simply not something we can adapt to. Anyway, you're destined to be a great war god, recorded in history books. Who knows how happy Odin will be to see you when you return to Valhalla. Why are you so stubborn as to come to France and face these trumped-up charges?" Francis was a true survivalist. To him, survival was paramount. Loki's actions were completely incomprehensible to him. "Brother Francis, we're acquainted. I fought so hard to get myself settled in Paris, and it's only been 5 months. You've slept with enough French women in 5 months. Abbot Francis was dumbfounded, unsure how to respond. "You've been a hero to my valley. I promised you the life you desire, and I must deliver. Since you're willing to sacrifice your lives for me, of course I can take this small risk for you." As night fell, Loki asked the old abbot to book us a nice hotel so our weary men could rest and refresh themselves. "Boss, the Plantagenet family only gave us 10 days, and now, haha, what are you afraid of? They're targeting me, and they won't close the straits so easily." Learning that Diamond-Flowered Durand had contacted Abbé Francis, Loki was even more convinced of his initial judgment. These Frenchmen were very similar to the maximum pressure tactics of the 21st beacon of democracy. They knew the Duke of a small country had no business negotiating terms with him, so they offered extremely harsh conditions, such as reaching Paris in 10 days. After a long journey, they had to enter the city breathlessly, and then enter the Inquisition unattended to accept the judge's trial. This set of operations is simply the arrogance of a great power to the extreme. But Loki has no intention of indulging these bad habits. "In my previous life, I was enough of being a peace dog for capitalists. In this life, I am destined to be a wolf in troubled times." I slightly modified the previous chapter to make it more readable. Chapter 395 Francis's Decision. After entering the inn, eating, washing, and slept until noon, Loki led Alfred and Wenzoff to the woods behind Versailles Castle. After a satisfying meal and drinks, Loki took Alfred and Wenzoff to the woods behind Versailles Castle, handing over 30 silver coins to see the unicorn in person. The unicorn symbolizes purity and has always been a friend of women. Across the entire Western continent, perhaps only France could afford to raise such an ornamental animal, one that could neither be eaten nor ridden. The Vikings had no appreciation for exotic animals, so they all left, muttering that their silver coins would be better spent on 300 flatbreads. As they journeyed through the woods, Loki realized that France was at a lower latitude than England. Here, the coniferous forests disappeared, replaced by broadleaf forests. Oak, ginkgo, red maple, and metasequoia trees, not seen in 22 years, began to appear. Young men on horseback often carried their women on their backs. The two men settled on a shady spot, spread out their stall, and sat down on the ground. They didn't need to work or travel, they could just relax, like young men and women of the 21st century, on soft blankets, enjoying the warm sunshine. Meanwhile, Loki had toiled all winter to ensure that every household in Normandy owned land and property. The disparity in national power between the two countries was laid bare here. Versailles was a peripheral city outside Paris, a satellite city, as later generations would call it. All goods bound for the English Channel from Paris were packaged and transferred here, as were all goods from the 7 kingdoms of England bound for France. Consequently, the official roads surrounding the city were bustling with horse teams constantly passing through. Following the throngs of carriages and porters, 7 hours later, as dusk fell, the majestic city of Paris finally emerged before them. This was the first time since his time travel that he had seen a vast city stretching to the horizon. According to Archbishop Francis's experience living there for an entire winter, Paris's permanent population was well over 300,000. This number was, of course, far from the million-person population of Tangchangan, but it was still a formidable one. Consider that, before the Slavic invasion, the combined Viking population of Scandinavia numbered only about 300,000. Not counting the 21 provinces, the city of Paris alone was equivalent to the entire Viking Empire's population. Upon entering the city, the exquisite architecture revealed itself to be identical to that of the ancient Roman city-states. At the end of the 8th century, Gothic architecture had not yet fully gained popularity, and the Plantagenet Renaissance focused less on architectural craftsmanship. Scholars simply unearthed ancient documents and rediscovered long-lost Roman art. Roman-era arches, columns, and spacious, flat, sculpture-filled forms were everywhere. Walking through this magnificent city, Loki was surprised to discover that there was virtually no exposed soil. All roads were paved with stone bricks. Any exposed land was planted with grass or shrubs. One doesn't know the value of food and fuel until they manage a household. Only after actually sitting in the Duke's chair did Loki understand that behind this seemingly ordinary streetscape in later times was the work of a well-staffed municipal government, toiling day and night. Now, looking back at the capital of Normandy, Hills of Rain, a large population brought with it its own problems. He couldn't even completely clear the roads of horse manure, let alone pave them. Entering a major city was a rare opportunity. Loki looked around and saw no guards watching. He immediately ordered everyone to have a day's free time, returning to Archbishop Francis's residence the following evening. As for the Inquisition, they were already late anyway. A few more days of delay wouldn't matter. Expecting me to adhere to your prescribed schedule like a chained dog? It was completely impossible. After explaining all the tasks, he happily rushed into the market with Alfred. Although they were nominally father and son, their age was similar, so communication was effortless. Wenzoff distributed ample silver coins to all the guards, and they quickly disappeared into the bustling streets of Paris like a school of fish in water. In stark contrast to Loki's composure stood Patriarch Francis. Unlike the Vikings, who lived day by day, ready to confront Odin with their axes at any moment, the old patriarch had a long-term vision for life. He constantly pondered how he would survive the next 10 years. He had a profound understanding of the question of survival. Despite possessing 100,000 imperial flower silver coins and 5 priceless jewel rings, he seemed ready to leave Loki at any moment in search of a better life. But the old patriarch knew clearly that just because the Illuminati couldn't deal with Loki didn't mean they couldn't deal with him. If he escaped Loki's protection, no matter where he fled, within 3 days, spies and assassins in the employ of Diamond Flower Durand would capture him and bring him back to France. The old patriarch dreaded to imagine what would await him. The Duchy of France, possessing the most fertile land and standing tall on this great land for 500 years, owed none of this to charity. Behind every glittering facade lies a veneer stained with blood and filth. The old abbot did not want to witness any of the dirty tactics of civilized people. After everyone left, Francis paced the room like an ant on a hot pan. As the lights began to light up and a bright moon rose in the sky, he opened the wardrobe and pulled out a wooden box from the bottom of a pile of clothes. His stubby hands traced the delicate wood grain of the box. After a long moment of contemplation, his gaze shifted from a distracted state to a sharp one. Finally, he tucked the box into his arms, making a decision. Chapter 396 Francis' Decision, 2. As braziers lit up along the street, the fragrant aroma of mahogany charcoal filling the air, Father Francis, dressed in a discreet black linen robe and carrying a hurricane lantern, exited the mansion through the back door. As soon as he left, he felt 2 shadows following him from above, not far from the street corner. Being followed had become a common occurrence for him since entering the city. The old father had his own way of shaking them off. He walked calmly through the bustling Parisian streets. Past rows of black-skinned slaves carrying packages, he exited Rue des Fleurs and entered the Place de la Croisette. Here, he found the Church of the Lord of the XC district. Passing through the crowds of nighttime prayers, he calmly reached out, opened the wooden door, and entered a confessional. "Lost lamb, what do you have?" The priest across from him had barely finished his words when the old father pulled 3 imperial flower silver coins from his pocket and passed them through a hidden compartment in the middle of the partition. It was clear this wasn't their first time engaging in such a transaction. The priest coughed dryly and took the silver. He stood up, opened the back door, and the 2 men swapped places and clothing. Just 5 minutes later, the priest, dressed in a black linen robe, left the confessional, carrying a kerosene lamp. The old priest, observing carefully from a hidden compartment, realized his trap had been successfully ensnared. He confidently donned his high priest's hat, pushed open the confessional door, and followed the congregants, who had just finished their Bible study, out of the church. Paris was ablaze with lights at night. The unseen old priest, unseen, first visited a used clothing store and bought a common spring evening gown for 3 copper coins. He then purchased a black cloth robe. He wandered through the breathtaking city of Paris for nearly an hour, carefully checking from all angles that he was not being pursued before heading towards his final destination, the Temple of the Fire, located in the city's Abraham Quarter. Across the entire Western continent, the only religion capable of exerting significant pressure on the holy bishop was Zoroastrianism, originating in Persia. The holy bishop had considered Zoroastrianism a mortal enemy for millennia. In most of the nations under the holy bishop's rule, the fire temples remained hidden underground. Only in major commercial centers like Paris, Venice, Seville, and Constantinople could the fire temple stand openly opposite the Cathedral of the Holy Father. The reason was simple. Zoroastrianism was the state religion of the Arab Empire, one of the 3 great powers of human civilization. As the number of Arab merchants crossing the Mediterranean to invest and trade in Paris grew, Central Asian merchants became a significant force. In all commercial cities, the wealthy reigned supreme. For merchants, gold was paramount. The Arabs first took their place at the table of the battle for Western continental domination in 639 AD. After they razed Syria with covert infiltration by the Zoroastrians and the powerful Fire Knights, they immediately prepared to invade Egypt, the most fertile land of the northern continent. Ever since Octavian's capture of Alexandria in 30 AD, the Romans had become acutely aware of the strength of Egyptian faith. They demolished all temples dedicated to the ancient gods and massacred all Egyptian worshippers. From then on, the Temple of the Scorpion, the Temple of the Sphinx, the Temple of Anubis, and the Temple of Horus vanished. The demise of the ancient gods brought with it the extinction of the chosen ones. Initially, scattered followers of the ancient gods could migrate and flee across the globe. However, after 6 centuries, the medieval West had forgotten that a great ancient civilization once lay hidden within these deserts. The Arabs diligently cultivated their rule for decades, making ample preparations. However, upon their arrival, they discovered that the once mighty Egyptians were now remarkably weak. All the ancient gods who had once protected Egypt had departed, replaced by the neglected Cathedral of the Holy Sepulchre. The Egyptians had no interest in promoting the invaders' beliefs. Consequently, Egypt was now entirely populated by mortals. In less than 2 years, the Arab cavalry wiped out all Byzantine garrisons. Muhammad, then the supreme commander of the Fire Knights, demolished all holy churches and replaced them with fire temples in every city. Thus, the Ramessian Principality, a puppet regime completely subservient to the Arabs, was born. Ironically, Muhammad used the name of a great Egyptian pharaoh. He hoped to awaken the seeds of resistance deep within the Egyptian people. He understood that the Arab Empire, stretching from the eastern continent to the Mediterranean, was stretched too far. Egypt seemed within the empire's control, but its extreme remoteness meant that independence was only a matter of time. As long as Egypt refused to return to Byzantium, the Arab Empire would accept this outcome. If the separation of Egypt from Byzantium was merely a minor undertaking, 39 years earlier, when the Tang dynasty was embroiled in the civil war of the Inlushan Rebellion, the Arab Empire, by co-opting the Western Turks, Tibet, and Tocharians, seized the opportunity to seize the Yangtze Protectorate and the Biding Protectorate, 2 key Silk Road nodes, from Tang control. This marked the birth of a powerful government. In particular, their successful capture of the Yangtze Corridor 10 years earlier had formally linked the divided vassal states of Western Turks and Tibet. This was tantamount to biting a large piece of flesh off the body of an immortal dragon. Without the Yangtze Corridor and all its outlying fiefdoms, the Tang dynasty was like a soldier stripped of his shield, exposing vast tracts of territory to the Tubo and Western Turkic kingdoms. Their control over the Silk Road was no longer as strong as it once was. Capitalizing on the civil unrest in the Tang dynasty, The Arab Empire, having successfully conquered vast territories for its vassal states, was now at the height of its power. While the Tang dynasty in the east remained unchallenged as the world's foremost power, the Arab Empire was catching up, poised to catch up. A large influx of believers flocked to the Holy Fire Temple, and the status of Zoroastrianism naturally soared. Driven by the increasingly wealthy and powerful Arab caravans, Arab merchants proliferated, and their wealth grew daily. In the past 3 years, these brown-skinned men, driving camels and wearing veils at all times, contributed nearly 40% of Paris's annual exports. Seeing the Arab merchants' growing status, even the proud Church of the Holy Cross was forced to concede, allowing them to build the Holy Fire Temple within the city, symbolizing the eternal flame. After crossing the main city and stepping onto an arched bridge, the other side of the river revealed the Arab gathering place. Once on the other side, the architectural style shifted dramatically. The original Roman buildings, constructed of snow-white marble, had vanished. In their place, semicircular domes of black and yellow volcanic rock emerged, and massive stone pillars stood one after another on either side of the river. It is engraved with a Bayestun inscription, which praises King Darius for unifying Persia, and a relief mural depicting King Xerxes sacking Athens. At the top of the stone pillar burns an eternal golden sacred flame. Chapter 397, Fire Bishop Mikroa. The old sheik concealed himself in the shadows of the street, moving swiftly amidst the flickering firelight. Thanks to the inherent stealth of Zoroastrianism, Arabs are naturally adept at camouflage. On the streets, most men wore thickly covered heads. They wore loose black robes, their hoods drawn back, and walked with their heads lowered. The women, on the other hand, all wore veils, revealing only their eyes. Years of Zoroastrianism had made this a people with a strong sense of wariness towards outsiders. For the old sheik, this was a very good habit. By covering themselves completely in black robes, everyone's appearance became almost identical, making any distinction almost impossible. Finding a shadowy spot, the old sheik quickly covered himself with the robes and joined the crowd, heading straight for the fire temple. It was the tallest building in the area. Its iconic dome and 4 surrounding braziers made its location easily visible. He avoided the main entrance, instead entering a side hall and knocking 3 times on a hidden door. He then pulled out a copper seal and inserted it under the door. A moment later, the secret door opened. The old priest, entering the side hall, hadn't had time to adjust to the darkness before him when the dark face of the fire priest, Abijah, appeared before him. Abijah's eyes were filled with surprise. "Lord of Fire, my old friend, aren't you leaving this city already?" Francis shook his head helplessly. The dark brother was right. After sending the message to Loki, "Don't enter the city, flee immediately," he had already packed his bags and made plans to escape. However, he hadn't expected Loki to lead Alfred across the English Channel. Forced to follow him back to the city, Francis had no choice but to follow him. "Listen, my friend, there's a change of plan. My fearless boss actually wants to go to the Inquisition and take on those French bastards. I have no choice but to tag along. Today, I need to pay for a service." Father Francis was a big fish that Abijah had met in Deux Rivers. Adhering to the principle of don't take advantage of a bargain, when the old father received his promotion and headed for Paris, Abijah immediately moved to the city as well. The two continued to work together, with Abijah fulfilling all of his services within the Zoroastrian church like a professional manager. "I have a feeling that tomorrow my brothers will be put on trial together. These brothers are used to being independent. They won't obediently obey the judge's verdict. If the battle breaks out and the two sides clash, I hope the fire-bearing gang can arrange a way out of the city," the old father said, pulling out the banknotes hidden in his sleeve. 100,000 imperial flower silver coins. "Is that enough?" Tisk, tisk. Abijah shook his head, his face hesitant. "Loki Sterrig is the most vulnerable of the prisoners. As you know, this is connected to those powerful figures lurking beneath the surface. Others on this continent might not know the secrets of the Illuminati, but the hidden firemongers are spread all over the world, and high-ranking information dealers within the Zoroastrianism know almost all the secrets of the world. They are naturally aware that the real rulers of the Illuminati are a group of lizard people wearing human skin. The Illuminati and the Plantagenet family have close ties. And my Zoroastrianism is no friend of the French royal family. That Emperor Charlemagne has repeatedly attempted to expel us from Paris because we've leaked too much information about futures markets, causing considerable losses for French merchants. He simply needs an excuse, sending you, A few of us would likely give him that excuse. The cost is the loss of this flame temple. The flame worshippers in Paris will remain dormant for a long time. During this period, no intelligence can be effectively transmitted. Do you think this is a problem that can be solved with a mere 100,000 silver coins? Father Francis nodded silently. There was no denying the truth in what Abbé Jean said. After a long silence, the dark-skinned brother spoke again. Brother Francis, you're not unaware of the Archbishop of Sousa's price. He's asking me to stay by your side and serve you exclusively, Archbishop, because he's after the 2 portal keys in Duke Loki's possession, whether it's the portal to the sunken city or the portal to Asgard. Any portal key, as long as you reveal the portal's location, you'll get any price. Why do you need to cling to this Duke? The Archbishop has spoken. If you can help us obtain the portal keys, your desired position as a city-state elder of a province is a piece of cake. This is precisely why the Zoroastrians allowed Archbishop Francis such VIP treatment, with a dedicated fire priest serving him. They knew the Archbishop was a favorite of Loki's. Their current closeness didn't mean they wouldn't have disagreements in the future. If they ever had a conflict, prying the Archbishop's words out wouldn't necessarily be as difficult as it was today. Francis smiled wryly and shook his head. Brother Abbé, stop questioning my loyalty to Duke Loki. I don't even know the location of the portal, and even if I did, I wouldn't reveal it. I have no regrets about betraying the English. I've witnessed countless of their evil deeds in my parents' tavern since I was a child. If it weren't for those English bastards, I would still have a family, but Duke Loki is the true Lord who gave me a new life. He is my Lord Christ. If 100,000 silver coins isn't enough, I can only ask you to summon the bishop of this fire temple and see if he'll accept my next offer. Abbé Jean blinked hesitantly. He knew the old patriarch had some skills, but the secrets the bishop of the fire temple possessed were often enough to overthrow a regime. Could this old man possess some resources comparable to the portal key? Nodding doubtfully, Abbé Jean turned and retreated. 10 minutes later, the door to the dark stone chamber opened. 4 women, shrouded in dark red robes, entered. Upon closer inspection, it was clear that their height, build, appearance, gait, and even the folds in their clothing were identical. The old priest had seen this woman before, when he first entered the fire temple. This was none other than the Archbishop of the Zoroastrianism in Paris, the Mirror Master, Mikroa. Chapter 398, Francis's Transaction. Upon entering the stone chamber, the 4 women immediately dispersed to various corners. One walked behind the old patriarch, one sat before him, and the remaining 2 guarded the 2 main doors. If nothing unexpected happened, the final person would remain hidden at the entrance. These 5 were all Mikroia. This fire bishop was a chosen one of the fire demon path, one of the 6 paths of the Cinder King. Able to control 5 clones simultaneously and transfer consciousness to them at any time, he was the primary divine power of the chosen one of the fire demon path. The new gods born in human civilization are all pragmatic and utilitarian. The divine power of the holy bishops chosen ones is dedicated to assisting the kingdom and maintaining stability. As for the fire bishops who constantly hide among the masses, the 6 sequence paths developed by the Cinder King are mostly related to spine, escaping, surviving, and longevity. The chosen one of the Phoenix path can instantly explode into flying insects, entering crevices inaccessible to mortals. The embers are immortal. Witches can enter their target's dreams through dream entry. The fire demon pathers can use a clone power called lava mirroring, controlling all of them simultaneously. During this process, they share consciousness, thoughts, and even their attack capabilities are identical. If even one of their clones survives, the fire demon pather can survive a battle. While reconsolidating their mirrors requires a significant expenditure of psychic energy and time, fire demon pathers, like the embers and the phoenix path, are extremely difficult to completely exterminate. The old patriarch glanced around, gazing at the 4 red-clad figures surrounding him from all angles. Noticing the West Asian woman's impressive figure, the old pervert immediately began to think in other directions. Were these 5 clones to marry 5 husbands, or would they share one? If they shared one, by the grace of God, could that brother even get out of bed every day? Mikroa had no idea what foul thoughts were swirling in the mind of this seemingly honest old man. She spoke fluent English, her voice quite pleasant. Brother Francis, my brother Abbé Jean thinks very highly of you. I hope we won't waste each other's time. The old abbot gritted his teeth again. He knew what he held in his hands was of great value. Meanwhile, Loki was in danger beyond his wildest imagination. He had only been in Paris for half a day, yet Abbé Francis had already resided there for 5 months. The Duchy of France, one of the wealthiest nations in the Western continent, boasted no fewer than 50 great Tang sword cultivators alone. Not to mention the nearly 10,000 golden scale guards, each a formidable warrior lavishly trained by the Plantagenet family. Not far from the city walls lay the training grounds of the Pegasus Knights and the Dragon Knights. If fighting truly broke out, the Dragon Knights would need only 30 minutes to arrive to reinforce the city. Within 30 minutes, the fully armed French soldiers would encircle Paris like an ironclad barrel. If such a situation were to occur, only the ever-prepared Zoroastrians could help them escape. He clenched his fists. Finally, he pulled the wooden box from his arms, placed it on the table, and gently pushed it to the woman in red across from him. A pair of white hands flipped open the lid, revealing 4 large characters in the flickering firelight. Mandate from heaven, may you live long and prosper. After conquering Normandy, upon learning that Patriarch Francis was about to depart for Paris, Loki immediately produced the imperial seal and handed it to him. He had one goal in mind, to sell it for money. Loki was a complete pragmatist. In his eyes, anything that didn't contribute to changing the status quo was unnecessary. For example, after his father's death, he ignored the puzzled looks of his tribe and removed all the bronze statues of his ancestors from the basement and melted them down to make nails. This was an act considered disrespectful by Erhe the Comprehensive, and his tribe was completely baffled. But 4 years later, when he successfully sailed, discovered the sunken city, plundered Lindisfarne Abbey, and brought back a vast treasure of gold and silver, no one uttered a single word of doubt. When one has nothing left, every resource must be spent wisely. Now, having finally conquered Normandy, the vast infrastructure and population replenishment of both provinces required funding. While the imperial seal was certainly desirable, the stability of the domain and a well-stocked treasury clearly provided a far greater solution to his pressing needs. On the other hand, while Patriarch Francis might appear lustful and treacherous, Loki could trust his unconditional loyalty. After the Vikings emerged from the sunken city, the Patriarch could easily have hidden himself in a deserted corner, waiting to reap the fruits of his victory. However, he once again risked his life, infiltrating Lindisfarne Abbey and uncovering information that ever had been possessed by lizardmen. It was this crucial intelligence that spurred him to commit regicide at the wedding ceremony, an act considered treasonous in the Middle Ages. Having risked his life twice for Loki, he had no reason to question the old patriarch's loyalty. Therefore, the task of exchanging the imperial seal for money could be entrusted to him. I believe you are already aware that King Henrin of the Izumo Trading Company has been missing for a long time, combined with the shocking battle in Hanshu village and the spies you have planted within the Vikings and the Izumo Trading Company. I believe you should know what I have. The fire bishop sitting across from Francis remained calm, but the last clone left outside the door had already turned and rushed into the circular dome on the top floor of the fire temple. This was the fire temple's most important secret chamber. Within it were stored the hidden sect secrets of all S rank and above within the Pope, which all high-ranking members of the gang were required to keep vigilant. Mikro carefully removed the black leather scroll, opened it, and read it carefully. Kingdom of Northumbria, AD 795, September 18. Information provided by Shipping Warehouse Manager, Gang Codename, Mao Kuzi. At 1:12 a.m., the Tang swordsman Ling Qiao urgently requisitioned the flying fish clipper. I saw 4 Tang soldiers following him. Each carried a jade pendant from the Izumo Trading Company. The leader was none other than the murderous demon King Henrin, Conqueror's Fortress, AD 795, June 12. Information provided by Waiter at the Mortals Must Drink Tavern, Gang Codename, Oily Head. At 9:36 p.m., in the legendary gambling game between Loki Starlag and Gustave Bernard, he threw out a strangely shaped jade seal. The arbitrator, Luochuan of the Izumo Trading Company, saw the seal and his expression changed drastically. After careful examination, he ruled in favor of Loki. Preliminary estimates suggest the seal is worth more than Storm's End. Note, the front of the jade seal is engraved with 8 Chinese characters. A corner is chipped and filled with gold. Mikro reviewed all the clues related to the legendary gambling game and the disappearance of King Henrin one by one, quickly integrating the information and piecing together the full picture in his mind. This Duke Loki indeed possessed a treasure of the eastern continent. When the Izumo Trading Company discovered it, they even sent a nascent soul cultivator like King Henrin to fight for it. However, Kings Henrin and several of his subordinates mysteriously died in Hanshu village. This suggests that the treasure is still in Loki's possession. White jade seal, engraved with 8 Chinese characters, with a corner filled with gold. This is very likely the one Francis held. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 399, Judgment of Heretics, 1. There's no curfew on the streets of Paris at night. Even late into the night, the street-side cafes and bars are bustling with activity. Shop owners and employees who close only at midnight flock in, ordering glasses of spiced fruit wine and freshly baked cherry pies to soothe the day's fatigue. Happiness belongs to others. As he walked, Father Francis remained worried. Just now, in the fire temple, Mikroa had clearly spent a long time deliberating. The outcome was a mixed blessing for the father. Joy, because she finally agreed to take on the commission. The jade seal Loki had given him was indeed as priceless as the legends said. The Fire Bishop of Paris was even willing to sacrifice the entire fire temple for this jade seal, barely 10 centimeters square. Even if the fire cult in Paris were ruthlessly eradicated, he wouldn't hesitate. Still, concerns remained. Fire Bishop Mikroa wasn't entirely confident the fire bishops would be able to help them escape Paris. There was a single reason: time was incredibly tight. Dawn would be just 4 or 5 hours away. Loki was about to stand trial, and those 4 or 5 hours were all the fire bishops in Paris had to prepare. Even recruiting spies from other locations, even activating every sleeper cell in Paris would be a bit tight. The Zoroastrianism's greatest advantage in continuously developing spies lay in the fact that within the Vatican, the power of the chosen could be directly transferred from high sequence chosen to lower sequence chosen. To mobilize everyone, at least 3 or 4 bishop-level demigods would be needed to gather the necessary psychic energy. However, Mikroa was the only demigod in Paris at the moment. Granted, the imperial seal was immensely valuable. With that price, the Zoroastrianism could meet all of Francis' demands. But Mikroa also frankly explained all the potential conflicts of interest. There's no need to worry, because worrying now is pointless. I've already given the seal away, and I'll never get it back. That's a done deal. The old patriarch repeated these words over and over again, as if in a self-hypnosis. He returned to his apartment in a daze, sitting by the window until the early hours of the morning. The once bustling streets were now deserted. As the sky began to turn pale, Loki and Alfred, reeking of alcohol, kicked open the door and returned, laughing. They were carrying not only a 5-meter-long coffin, but also a sack on Alfred's shoulders. It looked as if a living person was struggling inside. "What are you doing?" "Never mind, have fun as you please." The patriarch paused, then threw himself onto Francis's soft goose-down bed and fell into deep sleep. The old patriarch nodded, halting his urge to open the sack and see what poor soul was inside. The guards following Loki also entered the city. The pirates, clutching barbecue, bread, and fruit wine, excitedly compared their respective female companions. The old patriarch, who had also been busy all night, leaned against the wall, his eyes silently closed. Trading the imperial seal for a chance to survive, he had no idea if this deal was worth it. Worse still, Loki was completely unaware of it. Shortly after closing his eyes, he felt something cold rubbing against the hairs on his cheek. Opening his sluggish eyes, the first thing he saw was a gleaming short sword. The helpless sword hovered in midair. Looking back, the old patriarch spotted a handsome, dark-eyed Eastlander. Lord Lanlin. This sword cultivator was known to everyone, none other than the Golden Scale Guard's chief steward, Lan Bixu. He hurriedly stood up from the corner. The old patriarch then realized that a large group of Golden Scale Guards had swarmed into his room without notice. "Brother Francis, they're here to invite us." At the entrance, Loki, Alfred, and Wenzoff were escorted by a group of golden-armored men. Surrounded by dozens of men, they remained impassive, their composure unwavering. They didn't look like they were about to face trial. "Since the real boss is here, let's follow them to the courtroom for a tour." The people of Paris couldn't remember the last time the Golden Scale Guard had proactively escorted a prisoner into the Inquisition. When the heavy bass horn blared, many pedestrians had forgotten it was a signal to avoid. After the streets were cleared, row after row of golden-armored guards, mounted on snow-white steeds, emerged. They carried the Plantagenet banner and led the way. At the center of the procession were over 30 gray-robed torture monks, armed with iron thorns. Though fellow members of the Holy Order, they were born with a mandate to renounce all mortal desires. Inside the Inquisition, their daily routine consisted of flogging, interrogation, and burning heretics. Surrounded by over 30 torture monks, ordinary people would likely be terrified to the point of pissing and defecating. However, Loki and his companions, surrounded by this encirclement, remained unfazed. They had not yet been labeled enemies of France, and therefore were not shackled. Walking the streets of Paris, the Plantagenet family had to demonstrate to all merchants entering the city that they operated a fair and just government. Despite this, the three men had been stripped of their weapons. Are these giants from the north? Why do they look just like us? Haha, you silly boy, didn't you see the two-headed griffin crest behind that young man? He's obviously from the royal family of Wessex, a nice guy, so why is he hanging out with these Viking pirates? I heard Wessex was even a vassal state of France. Oh. Did you see those dozens of long-haired men at the end of the team carrying a huge coffin? They're the real Vikings. Why are they carrying coffins? Are they going to bury the Duke right here? The onlookers pointed and talked. Bored housewives lay on the balcony, and children, packing their bags and preparing to go to church school, also held the railings, their eyes wide with curiosity. Is this the Viking Kingslayer the bard spoke of? He doesn't look tall and strong, nor is he anything like the horns on his head, and flames under his feet described in the poems. He's just a mortal. I wonder how he killed His Highness Sabretooth O'Sullivan. I heard it was a surprise attack at a wedding. Really? How despicable. Hearing the women's whispers, Loki turned and laughed, completely unfazed by the tension of his upcoming trial. Dear people of Paris, pray to the Lord for me and for your children. He opened his arms and shouted to the people on the balcony. Pray for a fair judge. May the wrath of the world destroy and God be prevented from being unleashed upon you. Chapter 400, Judgment of Heretics, 2. The Inquisition is a pure white building flanking the Paris Cathedral. In the square in front of the building stands a silver statue of the Archangel Seraphim wielding a flaming sword, burning a demon. At the entrance, a large relief depicts the Trinity of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, working together to seal a demon. When the Golden Scale Guards and the Acolytes of Torture escorted Loki and the other two to the square, a row of nobles and citizens in various costumes lined the steel cathedral gates. The French Church still uses a trial process inherited from ancient Rome. After the defendant's final statement, a jury consisting of 8 nobles, 8 commoners, and 8 clergymen will vote on whether the defendant is guilty. The final sentence is decided by the Plantagenet family and the archbishop. From the opening of the court to the trial and ultimately the execution, the entire process can take weeks or even months. During this time, the prisoner can only sit quietly in prison, awaiting the verdict. Entering the Inquisition and glancing around, Loki discovered that it resembled the Colosseum he remembered, packed with spectators eager to witness a spectacle. Judging by their attire, a significant number were French mercenaries. After all, nearly 300 French mercenaries had perished in the Cloud province. To the proud French citizens, the thought of their brave soldiers perishing on vassal soil, at the hands of hairy barbarians, was unacceptable. Seated on the other side were the city's noble merchants. Most were relatives and friends of André Jarvin the White Eagle. As soon as Loki entered, they raised their fingers in righteous indignation, cursing the prisoner who had betrayed their friend. The once tranquil stone hall was instantly filled with a cacophony of French. The acolyte of torture led Loki to the judgment seat and stood on either side of the courtroom. As for the Golden Scale Guard, after completing their guidance, Grand Commander Ranbixa led his men out of the Inquisition and stood guard at the main gate. They no longer needed to stand guard around the defenseless Viking Duke. In their minds, even the most powerful demigod couldn't resist 30 torture monks unarmed. When Loki took his position, Alfred and Wenzoff stood behind him. Nodding to his 2 old companions, he looked back at the 30 guards at the end of the crowd. Rector Francis hadn't fled. He followed the procession into the courtroom, ensuring everyone had assumed their pre-rehearsed positions. Loki took a deep breath and gazed toward the head of the courtroom, where the judge sat in a pristine white chair. As Judge Ethan stood, the courtroom fell silent. The entire jury and spectators rose, and in an instant, the hall was hushed. I, Sir Ethan von Cologne, Grand Inquisitor of the Inquisition, hereby declare the court hearing for the murder committed by the Viking Duke Loki Starliger on April 12, assisting me on my right are Francisco Plantagenet, third in line to the throne of France, and his sister, Glinda Plantagenet. At the judge's signal, an 18-year-old youth in red stood up, holding a delicate girl beside him. The Plantagenet family is renowned for its beauty throughout the Western continent. The prince and princess are both handsome and elegant. On my left is Mr. Durand Salinas, president of the Paris Merchants Guild. He was a beloved relative of the deceased André Jarvin. May the Lord grant justice to the deceased. May the gods punish evil with ruthless veneration. May the Lord always bless the world. The crowd raised their hands and shouted. Loki smiled and nodded to everyone around him. Ethan gestured for his immediate companions to sit down, and the first round of his interrogation began. Loki Sterrig of the Sterrig family, I hereby accuse you of colluding with the evil gods to maliciously massacre French nobles and citizens, and destroy French property. Do you plead guilty? Loki smiled and shook his head. No, Ethan was irritated by his cynicism. He loved to see mortals tremble in fear. This Duke Loki was clearly too calm. Duke Loki, I need to warn you, Yun province is part of my French duchy. And the law of my holy French duchy is when a subordinate makes a mistake, the Lord bears the responsibility. Was Baron André Jarvin murdered by one of your men? With a light cough, Loki looked at Ethan without fear. From what I've heard, some of those French sissies may have perished under the axes of my people. All my men are subjects of the god King Odin. For Odin's subjects, killing chickens is a last resort. No one would have the time to slaughter a bunch of you, dancing, silver sword wielding noobs. This isn't pretty, this is hideous. Loki spoke these words in fluent English, not knowing French, and a buzz of conversation erupted from the audience behind him. What's that country bumpkin saying? Is he saying our army is weak? Haha. Just a frog in a well who's never seen the world. He hasn't seen how the mighty dragons of France, the sky-blackening sun, melted the Arab cavalry. If he had, I guarantee this subject of Odin would have been terrified. Oh, pardon my French. Not only the onlookers, but also Chief Justice Ethan himself, were subconsciously startled by these words. The Duchy of France had existed on this continent for centuries. The might of France was known throughout the Western continent. Most pagans were paralyzed by fear before even entering the Inquisition, some even wailing their hearts out. Loki had never seen anyone so disdainful of royal authority since he took his seat. Clang clang. Two powerful bangs of the bronze hammer summoned silence. Ethan sent a subtle, calm down, look to the eager acolyte of torture. This hairy barbarian was a duke after all. Enormous numbers of merchants from various countries gathered to watch upon hearing the news. The Duchy of France must send a signal to all merchants who come to do business. We are civilized people, the closest civilization to the Tang dynasty in the East. Like them, prisoners on trial are not even shackled until convicted, let alone physically assaulting others in court. Everything remains under control. After the restless crowd quieted down, Ethan said in a deep voice, "Call witness number 1." End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.